up, I look at my father's picture. Before I leave for school, I look at it again. Whenever I open my books for my lessons, I take out my father's picture and look at it.
Balochistan's missing people is one of Pakistan's most complex and unresolved crises. Generation after generation is carrying the burden of the disappearances. Women like Jannat Bibi, Dr. Mahrang Baloch, Saira Baloch, and now young Masooma continue to protest and seek answers about their missing loved ones. And they hope that one day the knock at the door will bring some long-awaited news. That's Assignment from Balochistan. I am Farhad Javed and the producer was John Murphy.
That was Assignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho and this is CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and you're on CBC. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. We got a big team this morning, and that is because Dylan Longhurst has returned to the morning airwaves. Well, we won't hear Dylan, actually, but he just waved hello to you on YouTube because that's what he's doing today, producing. Brad Lillies is into support. Good morning to you guys. Also, good morning to Sierra Sanders, who is here directing the program, and will be on air with The Commute. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who's behind the controls and will be on air with your weather. I'm Marcy Marcusa, as mentioned. Speaking of the weather, sunny today and a hot high of 24 degrees. Partly cloudy tonight, hazy and a low of 10. And that should be decent weather for the Bombers' home opener. We will check on the fire situation as well throughout the program. But right now, let's go straight to Heather Wells for news that's developing in Manitoba on your Thursday morning. Hi there.
My button is not working. It keeps turning itself back off.
It thinks it's Friday. It's already off.
No kidding. We have some encouraging signs in Manitoba's wildfire emergency. People from Cranberry Portage are going home on Saturday, and some other evacuated communities are also working on plans to welcome people back. So we'll hear about that. And one of the scientists who penned an open letter to the province this spring about inadequate research funding is happy more cash is coming for science. The province says it will top up its annual allocation for Research Manitoba. We'll hear by how much in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, when it comes to smoke and air quality, by the way, I just want to mention that the smoky conditions in the north are coming still from the wildfire situation, but the smoke in the west is actually fires from BC and Alberta. So just note that in the forecast. This morning on the fire situation a little bit later, speaking of good news, we're going to actually talk to the chief of Pimicikamak, David Monius, about what factors need to be just right for a safe return to the northern community. So we're going to hear more from him about where they're at. In addition, in the first hour of the program, to that very serious story, and we're thinking about you, Brandon, support is now being offered to students at that Brandon High School, Neelan, after a 15-year-old boy was stabbed by another student. Now, we're going to hear from the division superintendent this morning a bit more about the incident and more about response from police. So we will update you on that story right after World Report and the latest in national and international news, and that's up next.
On cue.
I'm Jill Deacon in for Tom Power. Robert Lepage is a legend of the Canadian stage. Robert will tell you why he wanted to set Shakespeare's Macbeth in the world of 90s biker gangs.
Society that still operates according to medieval laws and rules.
And why a work that's over 400 years old still feels so modern.
Q this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Emergency crews are responding to a devastating plane crash in India. Ambulances and firefighters are in a residential neighborhood near the airport in Ahmedabad. They are putting out flames on a multi-story building and trying to save lives. Air India Flight 171 went down shortly after it departed for London. 242 people were on board, including one Canadian. India's aviation minister says the airport in Ahmedabad is shut down and a support team has been set up for families looking for information. The CBC's South Asia correspondent, Salima Shivji, is in Mumbai. And Salima, what do we know about what happened?
Well, we know that this plane was full and it was heading for London's Gatwick Airport. Air India has confirmed that 242 passengers and crew were on board the plane. The vast majority are Indian, 169 people, but there were a lot of British nationals on board, 53, and 1 Canadian, as well as 7 people from Portugal. And there are reports of children on board as well, at least 11 kids on board. The plane signal was lost less than a minute after takeoff from Ahmedabad's airport in western Gujarat state, and it went down shortly afterwards. So it was flying quite low, and the airplane crashed into a residential area close to the airport, creating a huge fire and cloud of black smoke rising into the sky. And you can see smoldering charred debris strewn about across the area.
What is the latest on the rescue efforts?
Well, this was a heavily populated area, but that does mean also that rescue crews did get to the scene quite quickly. We've heard from a senior police officer at the scene telling reporters that the plane crashed into a doctor's hostel. Rescue efforts are underway, but at least 30 bodies have already been recovered. India's federal health minister has said that many people were killed in this crash. It is too early, of course, to know what caused the crash, but there will be a full investigation, and there will also be lots of questions here for Boeing. This plane was a 7878 Dreamliner, one of the most modern passenger planes out there, and this is that type of plane's first ever crash.
Thank you, Salima.
You're welcome.
Salima Shivji reporting from Mumbai. The United Nations nuclear watchdog is formally accusing Iran of not complying with its nuclear obligations, and it comes as U.S. and Iranian negotiators prepare to discuss a nuclear deal this Sunday. There are reports Israel is already ready to launch operations on Iran, and Tehran could retaliate by striking U.S. bases in the region. Crystal Gomansing has more from Jerusalem.
There are within the Israeli establishment people who have said that Netanyahu is a chronic bluffer and will never.
Still, Anshel Pfeffer, an Israeli author and contributor to The Economist, says Israel could launch strikes against Iran, especially after last year's counter-operation proved Israel could hit Iran's nuclear sites without being shot down. Talk of an Israeli strike and removing U.S. personnel from the region could be a pressure tactic to advance nuclear deal talks along between the U.S. and Iran.
Well, they are being moved out because it could be a dangerous place. And
U.S. President Donald Trump again last night said Iran can't have nuclear weapons.
We'll see what happens, but they are better.
With tensions rising around the Middle East, new reports of violence against the private aid group, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The U.S. and Israeli-backed organization says Hamas attacked a bus in Han Yunis carrying about 24 workers Wednesday night. GHF reports the unprovoked attack led to several people being killed and others injured. In a statement issued Wednesday night, it said, "For days, Hamas has openly threatened our team, our aid workers, and the civilians who receive aid from us." Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, Jerusalem.
The Canadian Climate Institute says Canada has a chance to pull ahead in the critical mineral race, but production needs to speed up. And it says investors do not have a sense of security. Marissa Beck is research director at the Canadian Climate Institute. It released a report today with a list of policy recommendations.
So our modeling shows that to fully meet Canada's potential and deliver on its critical minerals opportunities, new investment between $30 billion and $65 billion must flow over the next 15 years.
Her organization is recommending investors and governments work out a deal. So if the mineral price falls below an agreed upon number, the company gets a subsidy. And when the mineral value goes above a set price, the company pays the government back. Another American city is imposing a nighttime curfew. It is in response to the growing protests against U.S. President Donald Trump's immigration raids. Lisa Brown is the mayor of Spokane, Washington. She says the decision to impose it was a tough one.
I know there is tremendous fear amongst our local immigrant and refugee community. My heart goes out to families who are separated or are fearful of what might happen to them in their workplace or as they proceed about their lives in Spokane.
In Los Angeles, protests are entering a 6th day, but as Steve Futterman tells us, the demonstrations are getting calmer.
For the second straight night, downtown LA has been under a curfew, and it seems to be having the desired effect. Things weren't totally peaceful yesterday. There was one confrontation in the late afternoon between police and protesters at City Hall. Flashbangs were used as law enforcement tried to break up the crowd. But it was by far the most peaceful day since the protests began. And when the 8 p.m. curfew went into effect, most people left. Many, though, vowed to return.
Well, the National Guard said they're going to be here for at least 30 days, so I'd say as long as they're here.
LA officials remain highly critical of the way Homeland Security agents are going after and detaining undocumented immigrants. Mayor Karen Bass.
When you raid Home Depots and workplaces, when you tear parents and children apart, you're not trying to keep anyone safe. You're trying to cause fear and panic.
Yesterday, one of the raids involved a church. The pastor of the church tried to intervene but was rebuffed by the ICE immigration agent.
This will stand in my mind when we said we don't want this in our property. This gentleman just shouted, the whole country is our property. When someone tells that to you with a weapon in their hands, that was a very clear message.
A number of those involved in the confrontations have now been charged with crimes committed during the protests. The U.S. attorney here says, expect more.
We're coming after all these people. So let's be clear. This is the beginning, not the end.
Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has now named his replacements to sit on a key panel of vaccine advisors. He abruptly fired all 17 committee members earlier this week.
We're bringing people on who are credentialed scientists, who are highly credentialed physicians, who are going to do evidence-based medicine.
The panel's job is to help shape immunization policy in the United States. Kennedy himself is a vaccine skeptic, but he had promised he would not appoint what he called ideological anti-vaxxers. Of the 8 new names he announced yesterday, 4 of them have spoken out against vaccines in some way. Here at home, the backlog of surgeries created by the COVID-19 pandemic has been cleared. But a new report from CIHI has found Canadians are still experiencing longer wait times for certain surgeries. Health reporter Christine Birak explains why.
New data shows more knee, hip, and cancer surgeries are being done in Canada, but more patients are also waiting longer.
It seems maybe counterintuitive at first.
Cheryl Chewy is with the Canadian Institute for Health Information. She says the data reflects an aging population, more complex patients, and staffing problems.
Shortages that we're seeing in the health workforce. So all these factors together affect the wait times.
The data points out 26% more hip replacement surgeries were done last year, and 68% of patients had their surgery within about 6 months. But in 2019, it was 75%. The numbers are similar for knee replacements, and the wait for certain cancer surgeries went up 1 to 5 days.
We're trending in a direction that we don't want to see.
Dr. Olufemi Ayeni heads the Canadian Orthopedic Association. He says centralizing wait lists, recruiting retired healthcare workers, and more surgeons working in teams can help speed things up.
Our policy and position has always been, let's get patients access to care, let's improve the current system, and I think those efficiencies will make a difference.
I got a whole summer to limp around, stumble around with
77-year-old Jules Tupker lives in Thunder Bay, Ontario. He's been waiting over 6 months for a hip replacement. He says politicians knew Canadians were aging, but did little to invest in healthcare workers.
That's disappointing, and this is not something that just all of a sudden happened.
He worries he won't soon be able to walk while he waits for his surgery. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba. Everyone wearing their bomber blue. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're live on CBC in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. This is Information Radio. Thanks so much for joining us. Abby in with the weather forecast for today and for tonight if you are going to the Bomber game in just a moment. This hour on the show, we're going to start in Brandon, where the community is still reeling and trying to absorb what happened. Support's now being offered to students at Neelan High School after a 15-year-old boy was stabbed there by another student. This half hour will bring you up to date with what we know to this point. In addition, this hour on the show, Canada's Minister of Artificial Intelligence says that strict rules have not worked in other countries. So Canada's shifting us to a slower and more collaborative approach. We're going to hear more about where the country's headed when it comes to AI. We have a local guest to analyze that. So stay with us. Let's get to headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba is cracking down on the most dangerous impaired drivers. Under a new law, roughly 4 drivers a year would be handed lifetime bans. But critics say it's not enough. We'll hear some more details on that. And encouraging signs in Manitoba's wildfire emergency. People from Cranberry Portage are going home Saturday. Some other evacuated communities are also working on plans to welcome people home. In Flin Flon, officials say it is still too soon to know exactly when that could happen. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get to Abby Adiemi now in the forecast. Good morning.
Good morning. Across the province, most regions will enjoy warm temperatures with plenty of sunshine today. However, some haze from the wildfire will still be drifting across the province. We do have special air quality warnings in effect across the northern and western part of the province. In the north, we're talking about from the part and surrounding areas. That smoke is creating hazy skies and poor air quality that can shift through the day. Meanwhile, if we look towards the western part of the province, from Brandon into Turtle Mountain down to Souris, we're seeing smoke drifting in from fires in northern BC and Alberta. It is also reducing visibility, and air conditions can change quickly, so it's best to reduce outdoor times and consider postponing activities if you have to do so when this smoke thickens. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at 11 degrees and we are warming up close to 25 degrees today, so it's going to be a good one for the games.
No doubt. All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get to the commute now to set the day up. Here's Sierra Sanders.
Good morning. Our morning is just getting started, and that means our morning commute is just getting started. So if you see anything out there that is slowing you down this morning, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That is 204-788-3093.
Well, they're still coming to grips with what happened in Brandon, and we have the very latest information that we have here at CBC about it up first to start our show. As you may have been hearing in the news, a 16-year-old boy there faces numerous charges, including attempted murder after a violent attack at a Brandon high school. Police have told us that the 16-year-old boy stabbed a 15-year-old boy with a sword multiple times. Now, this happened at Neelan High School on Tuesday. Resource officers who were already at the school intervened within 3 minutes, but the victim still sustained injuries to his chest, arms, and thighs. He is in stable condition in hospital, we understand. Now, Chief Tyler Bates of the Brandon Police Division says they are still investigating the motive.
Well, clearly the actions are deranged, and our school resource officers are intimately in relationship with the schools that they provide support to. And that's the case in this instance. When you have a student calling the school resource officer resulting in a 3-minute response, I think that speaks to the presence, the visibility, and the trust that exists between the student body, the school administration, and our school resource officers. And that relationship is a special one. And in this particular situation, averted further bloodshed.
Students are back in school with resources now in place to support them. Matthew Gustafson is the superintendent for the Brandon School Division. He spoke with CBC's Faith Fundal yesterday about the situation.
What have you been saying to parents about what happened?
Our first focus has been on supporting the victim and his family. And then secondary to that, but also very important, is our concern for the Neelan students, families, and staff in this event. So our focus has been more about responding to their needs, making sure that we take care of them, not only yesterday and today, but into the future.
When you hear someone like the police chief essentially say that more victims and bloodshed were intended in this attack, how does that inform how you provide support to the students, to your staff, and to community members?
Yeah, I think there's two aspects to that. The one is that in itself will have an impact on the students and staff, but also that we'll see the impact rippling throughout other schools. But secondary to that is it reinforces the planning and preparation and the steps that we take in terms of our risk response plan and why the incident command system and all hazards approach is so necessary.
Right, and you're essentially alluding to what the chief has called the ARTA, or the Assessment of Risk to Others, and the VITRA, the Violence Threat Risk Assessment training that your school resource officers get. I know you will probably look at what went right and what went wrong. What's standing out to you right now as you consider both resources to help students and as you consider managing the situation, because you are in the space that you have to think about this in the big picture too?
Yeah, I think the one thing I just clarify is that the assessment of risk and the VTRAs are only one aspect of our risk response plan, and the immediate responses to that, and how the school and the division supports the response and works with our first responders as part of our incident command system and all hazards approach. And so we are just in the early stages of that protocol. Part of that is in fact responding to the immediate incident, but it's also about building that response for the support, for our students and staff and families. And then there will be different levels of assessment and debriefing that will occur in the near future that we can then, as part of our ongoing process, to ensure that we're continually having protocols that adjust for changing community dynamics, but also reflect the best practices that we see across North America.
Matthew, what are you doing immediately? Because there are the levels of support that you're describing there, but in the now times, what are you doing immediately?
Yeah, so again, our immediate in the last 24 hours, and it's just been over 24 hours, has been our focus on the Neelan students and staff and the victim and his family. There will be other pieces happening in the very near future, but in the last 24 hours, our focus has been to support the students and staff during this deeply impactful event.
And that also looks like, for example, canceling provincial exams. Why was that something that you chose to do?
Yeah, the thing with the provincial exams is the principal and working with staff and concerns with family. It quickly became clear that the impact of yesterday's event was going to affect the students, and so it was no longer going to be a valid assessment. And so taking that stressor away and realizing that students would not have been in a place to be able to write that just made the most sense.
The weapon used in this alleged attack was a sword. How do you feel about the use of metal detectors in schools? Might this be something that you would consider as adding as a layer of protection?
Yeah, I think in terms of next steps and things like that, that will occur. Those conversations will be occurring in the near future. We have and continue to evaluate and look at emerging technologies and things that we might be able to use. And it's that balance of is it the most appropriate response given our current situation? And so those conversations in light of yesterday will occur in the future, but not today. I think it would be premature to try to predict anything from those conversations until we're able to fully understand the situation. But again, our focus has been on supporting the students and families and staff.
as I mentioned, police say that the suspect could have hurt more students. You're there. You're with your people. You're there with students, with parents. How does that sit with you as a human being?
We've seen across North America and the world incidents where multiple students have been injured or killed, and that's obviously of great concern for us. And so when something like an incident that happened yesterday occurs in our own city, that is of grave concern for us. But that is why we take the steps, and we've had lockdown procedures in place for over 2 decades. We've revised, we've improved on those, trying to reflect the best practices, and this just creates a greater importance of school safety. And school safety is not just in terms of the procedures that you use to react. It's also about the climate and culture of the building, ensuring that students feel part of the school, and making sure that there are trusted adults that they can go to be able to talk about things, while also looking at the physical safety of including the building itself.
So that was a conversation that CBC's Faith Fundel had with David Gerhardt late yesterday afternoon. David is the head of the department. Pardon me, Mr. Gerhardt is the head of the Department of Computer Science at the University. Why am I talking about my next guest? I apologize. That was a conversation that Faith had, of course, with Matthew Gustafson, the superintendent of the Brandon School Division. Next, we will be talking to David Gerhardt. But the situation in Brandon, by the way, if you want to read more about it, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba, and you can read the very latest of what we know about what happened there. Just to reiterate, the 16-year-old boy who faces numerous charges, including attempted murder after a violent attack at that high school, Neelan, and the 15-year-old boy who was stabbed with a sword multiple times, we understand is still in hospital and now in stable condition.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
Well, surprise, I've already introduced our next guest because I was talking about David Gerhardt, who is the head of the Department of Computer Science at the University of Manitoba. And he joins us this morning because we're going to talk about Evan Solomon, Canada's new Minister of Artificial Intelligence, and what he had to say. He outlined a shift in the country's AI strategy yesterday. So he said the government will focus less on heavy regulation and more on using AI to grow the economy. So that includes helping small and medium-sized businesses get the most out of AI tools, but without ignoring data and privacy concerns. So can he do it all? Let's ask David Gerhardt. Good morning to you.
Hi, Marcy.
It's interesting because when you were last on when he was appointed, and we talked about this new ministry and what he would do with it, and he's doing exactly what we talked about, which is looking how to grow the economy using AI. But how careful does he have to be that, he walks a careful line, because there's still a lot of controls and privacy issues. I mean, lots of them, to say the least. That's an understatement, that have to be dealt with.
Yeah, I think the focus on growth over regulation is an interesting approach, because it's an attempt to balance these two different sort of competing interests here. It's clear that around the world there are different approaches to regulation. The EU has a really strong risk-based approach. The United States has tried to do a few things in the past, but today it's more or less open season. And a place like China has regulations that are directly related to their political situation in that country. So finding some kind of a balance there, and finding some approach that doesn't restrict economic growth but still gives some kind of guidance to the public and to businesses that are trying to do this work, that I think is really important.
What's your sense of the minister talking about boosting research and building data centers?
Yeah, this is really important for what we call data sovereignty, right? When we right now, if we do something with AI, the data that might get put into the system goes to some server in the United States, and we know that it's not always clear what happens to the data once it gets there. So having a data center that is on Canadian soil that we know and trust how it works gives more confidence for these companies, but also for the public that might use the services that these companies develop.
It seems that AI, more than anything, frankly, in my lifetime, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. The internet was created in my lifetime, but it's just the changes are moving at the speed of light, right? And so that means that the privacy and controls need to as well. Could we face risks if we wait too long to focus more deeply on how we protect Canadians from this emerging technology, even though it can be used for good, as we've discussed, of course?
I think there are real risks here. I mean, not just because we want to be sure to protect data, we want to be sure to develop artificial intelligence in responsible and ethical ways, but there's also a market risk because the public's sentiment on AI is fractured these days. There are people who are very excited about this technology, see it as the thing that will make everybody's lives better, and we need to build it as fast as we can. But there are real risks and concerns, and a lot of the public is more attuned to these concerns today. Things like deep fakes and scams. There was the story yesterday about the store in Flin Flon whose warehouse got burned down by the wildfires, and they were having an appeal to the public, but it was all fake. It was all invented by AI. And this kind of targeted scam is much more easy to develop now that AI is around. So that, but also the environmental concerns and also the economic concerns, job loss. There's a number of real concerns that the public has. And in the absence of a strong governance framework, it may be difficult to develop a market when people don't want to buy the product because they're worried about whether or not it's going to lie to them.
Where do you start with this? Like if you're looking at Canadian AI companies right now, if growth is the focus, where do you even begin with it?
Yeah, as we said, data centers, I think, are key, and not just having, a box of computers, but also the networking infrastructure to get data back and forth, the power infrastructure to drive these things, right? We need significant investment in small nuclear reactors, in hydro and solar and wind, all of these green energies that can power these kind of technologies, but also the direct funding and support for research and development. Research is expensive and risky, right? You don't know that it's going to have an economic outcome. And so putting money into universities, frankly, as well as in partnerships between research institutions and small businesses to develop this kind of technology and put it forward.
In Manitoba, any word locally on I know we talked about this last time when the minister, at the point when the ministry was created, but what's the Manitoba lens on this announcement and looking at development, and where might we hope dollars will flow more here to help support our AI growth?
Yeah, I think Manitoba actually has a couple of really interesting, unique approaches. There are conversations all over the world and across Canada about how to build new technologies that can then have an economic impact. But there's a number of conversations here in Manitoba around the responsible development of artificial intelligence, the ethics of these kind of things, making sure that the human is in the middle of these conversations and that it is humane first. So that is an approach that is happening here as well as in other places. Of course, we've also got the Sector Council, the Manitoba Association for Artificial Intelligence Professionals. We've got lots of people in lots of different industries talking about AI and building out new solutions. So Manitoba definitely can be a player in this game.
Thank you very much, David. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
That is David Gerhardt. He's head of the Department of Computer Science at the University of Manitoba. Coming up, we have business news. Crystal Ramlichan's back today. She's talking about the Trump administration that has won a temporary victory to keep tariffs in place. So we will hear more about that. And then connected to that story, still ahead in the next half hour of the show, Saskatchewan's made a decision to put American alcohol back on the shelf. And that begs the question. We wondered whether or not people are still buying Canadian. And so we asked some Winnipeggers that question, and you'll hear their responses coming up the next half hour of the show. In addition, at 10 to 7 this morning, before world leaders gather in Canada this weekend, an open letter has been sent to Mark Carney, the Prime Minister. We're going to hear from one of the people that drafted that letter about the role they feel that Canada should be playing to end the crisis in Gaza and the broader Palestinian territory. So that's all still ahead on the show. Stay with us. Right now, it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is 11 degrees. A day much like yesterday. We begin with sunshine, then a mix of sun and clouds, a hazy high of 24. Manitoba is cracking down on the most dangerous impaired drivers, but critics say it's not enough. Under a new law, drivers will have their licenses suspended for life if they're convicted of impaired driving causing death or bodily harm twice in 10 years. Before that, those drivers had their licenses suspended for 10 years. MPI data obtained by CBC shows an average of 4 people received 10-year suspensions every year. That means under this new law, roughly 4 drivers a year would be handed lifetime bans. The family of one impaired driving victim says it doesn't seem like a lot, but Justice Minister Matt Wiebe says they are working on legislation with even tougher penalties.
We're lockstep with victims saying that, we want to strengthen the legislation in any way we can.
Wiebe gave no timeline on when the legislation will be introduced. He says in the meantime, the law that came into effect last week will serve as a deterrent to drunk driving. A violent sword attack at Neelan High School in Brandon has students, staff, and families reeling. A 15-year-old boy was seriously injured after being attacked on Tuesday. Ingrid Pulley-Blank has a teenager in grade 10 at Neelan.
We're just trying to process how to feel and how to navigate this and how to support those who were affected more so.
Pulley-Blank helped decorate the sidewalks outside the school yesterday with messages like "All you need is love" and "Peace to all." Brandon School Division says it has cancelled provincial exams and is offering counseling for as long as it's needed. A 16-year-old boy faces a number of charges, including attempted murder. Both the suspect and victim, police say, were students at Neelan High School. A wildfire evacuee from Flin Flon says she has hope after the city announced it's working on re-entry plans. The community of 5,000 was evacuated 2 weeks ago. Officials are working to get people back, but say it's still not safe right now. Teresa Bignell is staying in a Winnipeg hotel. Before that, she was at an evacuation center.
If it's safe, I'd be running back there. If I had wings, I'd fly home right now. Honest to God, it's I just want to get home. I want to get back to normalcy.
People from Cranberry Portage are going home Saturday. And Chief David Monias at Pimachikamak Cree Nation says they are also working to get people home, but can't say when. A Northern Manitoba School Division says about 800 of its students have been displaced by wildfires. Among those impacted in the Frontier School Division are students in Cranberry Portage, Lynn Lake, and Sheridan. Superintendent Tyson McGilvery says it is the most significant evacuation the division has experienced. McGilvery says for now they're focusing on the well-being of students and staff.
We're hopeful that most of our communities will be repatriated back and we can resume normal school functions, hopefully for the last 2 weeks of the school year. As soon as we have the okay to get back into community, we'll re-engage our kids and making sure that they're in a good place to enter into their next grade level.
McGilvery says even more students in Gillam, Leaf Rapids, and Norway House, among others, have been affected by school closures due to smoke. Now, a developing story this morning. An Air India passenger plane with 242 people on board has crashed in the northwestern India city of Ahmedabad. Emergency crews on the crash scene. Air India Flight 171 was bound for London's Gatwick Airport. Few details are known at this point, but we know the plane went down shortly after takeoff, crashing in a residential area. The plane, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. It's an aircraft introduced in 2009 and, according to aviation officials, has never been involved in a crash incident. We also know a Canadian was among those on board. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. One of the scientists who penned an open letter to the province this spring about inadequate research funding is happy more cash is coming for science. The province says it will top up its annual allocation for Research Manitoba. The agency provides the bulk of the research funding in this province. Dylan Mackay, a University of Manitoba food scientist, says he was pleasantly surprised to see funding increase from $14 million a year to $19 million.
Is that every dollar invested provincially brings in 4 to the province. That's a smart investment I think any Manitoban would see.
More than 200 scientists wrote to the province after Premier Wab Kinew mused about luring disaffected U.S. researchers north of the border. Well, it is game day in Winnipeg. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers kick off their CFL season tonight against the BC Lions at Princess Auto Stadium. The Bombers will be without quarterback Zach Collaros. He was suspended for a game for failing to respond to a request for an off-season drug test. Chris Drevler will line up behind center in his place. The Bombers will also line up against a familiar face. Former Bomber quarterback and coach Buck Pierce is now the Lions head coach. Kickoff tonight at Princess Auto Stadium is 7:30. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
So I was going to wear my jersey.
Yeah.
And then I decided not to. I still wear blue, kind of accidentally. The only person representing is Sierra, who should come in and show everybody what she's wearing because you're on camera. But she's not in front of the camera. Are you coming in?
Well, you know what?
She's not coming in. She's not coming in right now. Anyway.
Okay, but you'll see her soon. I wore a gold kind of sweater.
That's good.
But
okay,
no,
you and me are blue
it's
and
not
gold.
matched with blue, so that really doesn't work.
We kind of look good. Sarah's got a really nice Bombers sweatshirt.
Yeah,
actually.
I like that too. I might go out and get one.
I know. Every year I get tempted by the new stuff, though, right? It's hard.
Well, and this is Grey Cup year too. So.
I know. It's exciting. We haven't had Grey Cup here in a very long time. So I always like how people take to the streets. I always remember when the Bombers have when they won the Grey Cup and thinking how many people would show up for the party. And when you go to cover that, which I did, like you're on the street and there's no one there at first and you think, is anyone going to come? Like, when it's a parade. And then it was just so packed. So there's a lot of love here for the Bombers.
There certainly is, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get to Abby. There will be some love in the forecast. There's a little bit of rain in it, but there's also love if you're looking just for some sunshine and you're in a safe area out of wildfires where you can enjoy that. So Abby has our regional forecast next on CBC.
Yeah, good morning. Maybe taking off from game day, weather updates for folks that'll be attending the games today. When the game will be starting, temperatures will be around 21 degrees and mild at that time. We would have touched a high of 24. And the winds will be mild from the northeast. So if you're going to the game, temperatures will be around 21 when the game starts. Now, looking at conditions across board, from sunny south to smoky skies in the north, the province is going to be seeing warm and hazy day today with sunshine in most of the regions. Special air quality statements still in effect for parts of northern Manitoba into western Manitoba. In the north, we're talking about the Par and surrounding areas. Smoke from that fire really causing hazy skies and poor air quality that can be shifting during the day. Then if you come towards the eastern part of the province from Brandon through Turtle Mountain all the way to Surrey, you're going to be seeing smoke in the air from fires in northern BC and Alberta. That's drifting in and it's reducing visibility, and conditions can change quickly. So it is best to limit outdoor activities when you notice the smoke coming into your area. Now, for the Red River Valley region today, Winnipeg and surrounding area, we're looking at warm and bright conditions. It's currently 11 degrees. The sun is streaking through the clouds. We expect a mix of sunny conditions and clouds through the afternoon with hazy skies also in the mix. Winds will be coming from the south and turning windy by the afternoon period. We'll see a high of 24 degrees. We'll get close to that 24 around 4 p.m. and then tonight stays partly cloudy. For the Pembina Valley region, we're talking about from Morden all the way down to the U.S. border. We're seeing sunny conditions right now, 14 degrees. The skies will stay mostly sunny this morning. Then some clouds are drifting. We still have local smoke lingering behind in that part of the province. Temperatures will get close to 24. Also, in the Westman region, it's misty in Brandon this morning. The air quality remains poor and is drifting wildfire smoke. Visibility can change quickly. Temperatures, we're seeing it around 8 degrees. Today will bring sunshine, followed by a mix of sun and clouds. And as mentioned, lingering smoke in the air. Temperatures will be warming to 23. Dauphin is at 6 degrees this morning. We're seeing sunny conditions also there. Expect mainly sunny skies, light breeze. Winds will be mild coming from the south. The high would reach 21 today, and partly cloudy conditions will continue into the night. Gimli at 12 degrees for the Interlake region. We're looking at the skies will stay mainly sunny with little haze in the air. Winds will be coming from the south, and it's going to feel windy at some point, high around 21. And now we head into the northern part of the province where we have smoke that's still impacting air quality. The powerful influence surrounding areas, we're seeing temperatures around 7 degrees at this time. We still have that special air quality statement. It remains in effect due to smoke from local fires. Now, conditions can vary during the day, but today we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds, and the smoke continues into the evening. High will be around 15 degrees. And then further north, we're tracking conditions in Thompson at this time. Thompson is at -3, Mercy, mostly cloudy there. We'll see a mix of sun and clouds today. Mild winds, skies clears tonight. Temperatures will fall close to zero and we warm to 14 degrees. Further north, Churchill 7 and mostly cloudy, a mix of sun and clouds in the forecast, turning sunny late in the morning, winds coming from the west and then get breezy at some point. We'll see high around 15. So summary, sunny in the south, smoky in the north. Most regions will be warm and hazy. Winnipeg sits at 11 at this time, getting warmer close to 24 degrees, and temperatures will be around 21 and mild winds from the northeast when the game starts at 7:30 today.
All right. Now you stick around because I have a quick question for the team, including Crystal Lee if she wants to weigh in just a minute. It's part of our programming this half hour. But first, let's turn to Sierra in her awesome Bombers jersey to tell us what's going on in the commute.
Good morning. No calls on the commuter line so far, so things are moving smoothly out there. Still lots of time in the show, obviously, so if there is something slowing you down out there, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That is 204-788-3093.
All right, let's check with the team here. So we have Sierra in here. I shouldn't say jersey. She's in her awesome sweatshirt. We have Abby. We have Crystal Lee Ramlakan, who I think we can punch up here too. She's joining us for business news in a moment. So this half hour, we're going to be talking about whether or not people are still buying Canadian. If they started to do that, if they shifted. Abby, how about you? Were you ever in that camp where you were like leaning into trying to look at every label? And I'm leaking a bit right now. I will just admit. I think at first I was really sort of, and now sometimes at the grocery store, I still want to be right-minded. I'll notice if something's Canadian, but I have not been paying as strict attention.
I actually still do buy Canadian. It's just an unconscious thing for me. Even before that movement, it's always been like I just walk into the store and I try to go, I'm proudly Canadian, so I'm just going to support Canadian and local.
So even before tariffs, you were paying attention to that? Even before the tariffs,
I've always paid attention to local. I'm that guy that supports the local shops.
I'm having problems with carrots. I mean, I shouldn't now because you can grow carrots here, but in the wintertime when sort of this was really developing, I was having trouble because we give our dogs those little carrots. I know, first world problems, right? Mm-hmm. But they aren't in Canada grown. Sierra, how about you? You want to weigh in?
Oh, I definitely, when it first started, I was, all in on it. And I still try and uphold that and still try and keep that in mind when I am walking through the grocery store. But it sometimes does get in the way, unfortunately. And sometimes you have to make the little sacrifices for, such as you've been mentioning, the carrots. And I think one of our colleagues brought that up yesterday, actually, was she broke for the carrots. And it sounds like that's one of the main parts, the sticking points.
Accidental excellence with a joke. I love that. I had a conversation with some people in a grocery store about carrots when this all first started. It is something people are talking about. All right, let's turn to Crystal Lee. So we're going to actually hear from other Winnipeggers this half hour on that. Crystal Lee, you can opt out or you can weigh in on the question. Where are you at?
Well, I think it's interesting that you guys are talking about this because I think we talked about this a few weeks ago here on the Business Report that some experts were saying that the Buy Canadian thing wouldn't necessarily keep up because, the most important thing to people is cost. And, especially with, tariffs still in place and, people worried interest rates are not going down right now. They've been holding them. So, some people might just be thinking about, the cost instead of necessarily buying Canadian. Me personally, we're definitely spending local when it comes to tourism. So we're going to go to the Muskoka area for summer vacation, then we're going to go to PEI. So, we're keeping all of our travel local in Canada.
Yeah, we've done that as well, canceled our U.S. trips that we would normally take. There's some, cross-the-border things that we might do, but not this year. For lots of reasons, not just tariffs. All right, let's talk about the Trump administration on business here. They've won a temporary victory to keep those tariffs in place. Can you break down the details for us?
Yeah, so a U.S. court has ruled that President Donald Trump's sweeping global tariffs can remain in place while a case against them is heard. So some American businesses are pushing against these tariffs. And last month, the U.S. Court of International Trade ruled that Trump does not have the authority to wield these tariffs through the use of the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. So the act gives the U.S. president authority to control economic transactions after declaring an emergency. However, the White House says Trump is using the powers legally. So all of this means countries, including Canada, will continue dealing with tariffs for now. Now, the court says its temporary stay is not a ruling in this case, and it has ordered an expedited schedule for consideration of this case. So arguments are expected in court by July 31st. And we've seen the effects of these tariffs. Stock markets had been in turmoil, and supply chains have been upended as Trump used these unprecedented presidential powers to enact these tariffs. And this act had never been used before by a president to impose tariffs.
Let's go to another story here. We just had a conversation about AI, and now Hollywood's going after images generated by AI. What are the details on it?
Yeah, that's right. So Disney and Universal have filed the movie industry's first major copyright lawsuit over artificial intelligence. They are accusing AI image generator Midjourney of ripping off dozens of characters they own, including Yoda and the Minions. The entertainment companies say Midjourney is a bottomless pit of plagiarism and a virtual vending machine for endless, unauthorized copies of copyrighted works. So the studios allege Midjourney violates their copyrights in two ways. One, by training its AI model on their intellectual property, and two, by generating images that are supposed to be protected. Now, Midjourney has not responded to cease and desist letters, which have asked the startup to stop. The startup went viral in 2023 with that Pope in a puffer pic. Do you remember that one?
Yep.
Yeah. People thought that the Pope was wearing like a puffer jacket, but turned out to be AI. And it also started getting heat last year when the New York Times reported that it was churning out copyrighted images for anyone who requested them. So Disney and Universal are seeking damages. They're also asking a judge to stop Midjourney from launching its new video tool. And a number of AI startups that scrape online data are facing copyright infringement lawsuits, including from record labels, authors, and news organizations.
What's up in the markets, Christelle?
In Europe, stocks are falling. Germany is down. The UK is down. France is down. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan is down. Shanghai is up. Hong Kong is down. Oil is down $1.32 to $66.83 US per barrel. Gold is up $27.34 to $3,380.93 US per ounce. And the dollar is up just over 1/10 cent to 73.3 cents US.
Thanks, Christelle.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Well, let's get to those thoughts on buying Canadian. American liquor's back in the shelves in Saskatchewan, so that's what prompted us to wonder whether or not people are still buying Canadian. CBC's Jim Agapito hit the streets of Winnipeg to hear what you had to say.
Kathy Gervais. Kathy, I want to ask, Saskatchewan will be selling U.S. alcohol again. How do you feel about this?
I think it's their decision, obviously, but, you know, if that's what the people want there, I'm not sure.
Is that something we should be doing here in Manitoba?
I think whatever we're doing here is working for us, so I think every province has to decide for themselves.
Riley Drummond. I don't know why they would sell them. The U.S. does have good alcohol.
Would you want that here in Manitoba, and how do you feel about Saskatchewan doing it?
Well, Saskatchewan, yeah, I kind of miss it, because I had a favorite drink called Sourpuss, and that was the U.S., and I kind of miss it. So I would love to have it back, actually.
Have you gotten any other Canadian alcohol to replace that?
Smirnoff.
Smirnoff?
Yeah.
Shirley Middleton. I will not buy anything that says the USA on it unless I can't get it any other way, like Schmucker's Jam.
Schmucker's Jam?
Yeah, whether it's made in the USA. Because if the Americans think they can take us over, I want nothing to do with them.
Annabelle Kazera, a little bit, but not as much as I thought I would have to.
Okay, what do you mean?
Because a lot of the American things are still in store and they're still selling, so it's like not much of a big difference as of now.
Is it something that you avoid?
I don't really care if it's Canadian or American. It doesn't make a difference really to me.
Yes, I do pay attention to what's Canadian. And I do appreciate that the grocery stores have, Canadian products, figured out so that you know right away that it's a Canadian product.
Now, have you stuck to those habits?
Yes.
Then what are some of the things then that have been hard to replace with non-American goods?
Some of the vegetables, I think fruits come from lots of different places in the world, but I think the vegetables are, until the Manitoba produce starts coming in, that was the trickier one.
I look at it and see on everything I buy if it's made in Canada or the U.S. Right, my Smucker's jam.
Anything else?
I know, Campbell's soup. We used to have a plant in Manitoba. It's now gone, but they're all American too. And I'm sorry, I only like Campbell's soup.
How has buying Canadian affected your wallet?
It's definitely a bit more expensive, but if you watch for sales and, pay attention to what's going on, it's not that bad.
No, it's okay. It's the same. I mean, everything's up than it was a couple of years ago, but everything does go up, so.
All the prices are jacked up now, so it's like way more expensive than it used to be from when it was.
Yes, Smirnoff's a little cheaper than sourpuss.
Jim Agapito out in the streets of Winnipeg asking people if they're still paying attention to buying Canadian after months of Trump's tariffs in Saskatchewan. U.S. booze is going back on the shelf, not here. Partly cloudy and 11 in Winnipeg. By the way, if you want to weigh in on that question, we'll take listener lines on it. 204-788-3205. Time right now is 9 minutes to 7 o'clock on your Thursday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on CBC. Well, next, let's turn to serious matters. This week, an open letter was sent to the Prime Minister. So far, there are 412 signatories, including former diplomats, international legal experts, and faith leaders from all across this country. They're calling for Canada to take decisive action to help end the crisis in Gaza and the broader Palestinian territory. Alex Neve is here to talk about it, professor of international human rights law at both the University of Ottawa and Dalhousie University. He also helped draft this letter. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Marcy.
Tell me a little bit about the 5 priorities that are in this.
So it goes on for pages, but the very high-level version is as follows. Number 1, and we've all heard about this for months, of course, but we need to get serious about an immediate, permanent ceasefire in Gaza, and right alongside that, the full release of all unlawfully held captives, held by Hamas, held by the Israeli government. Second, the devastating, harrowing situation on the ground when it comes to humanitarian needs, humanitarian relief. The Israeli government has been blocking that since the beginning of March. It's making the genocide worse. It's causing suffering and death every single day. That needs to come to an end. Third, Canada, which has for a long time put ourselves out there as a believer in international law, as a champion of international courts, has been very tepid when it comes to the role of 2 key courts, the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court, both of which are seized with this crisis. There are concrete steps which we detail in the letter that we should be taking to show we really mean it. Fourth, there are domestic measures. This isn't just about things we should be doing on the world stage. There are measures we should be taking within our own legal and political context. That includes withdrawing from the free trade agreement we have with Israel, imposing further sanctions against senior members of the Israeli government, launching crimes against humanity and war crimes investigations under our own domestic legislation, including against Canadian citizens. Imposing a full arms embargo against Israel, which would include any parts and components which go to Israel by way of the United States, and that is happening. Stripping charitable status from organizations that are found to be complicit in what's happening in Gaza. And then lastly, the 5th recommendation, an important one, is that Canada finally needs to join the 149 other countries in the world that have recognized the state of Palestine. That's integral to upholding and respecting the rights of Palestinians. It's foundational to moving forward with a 2-state solution.
Why this moment, Alex? I'm just, obviously we have many world leaders traveling, obviously, to Canada right now. But also we haven't had action in the ways that you would like to see it up to this point. So are you hopeful that in this moment, this will get different attention, or are you fearful that we're too far down the road, if you will?
I would say we feel both. We feel that sense of hope. We feel that sense of fearfulness that the inaction that has been characterizing too much of Canada's and international action will continue. And we do think this is a crucial moment, therefore. The situation on the ground could not be more dire. As we were writing this letter, we realized, and these are international legal experts, former UN ambassadors across the country, the words now escape us as to what can we possibly use to describe the level of suffering and destruction and death that is happening on the ground. So we can't continue to have this kind of passive wait and see and hope that things are going to get better. And we do need to seize the opportunity of hosting the G7 summit. That's an incredibly important opportunity for Prime Minister Carney to catalyze and galvanize some more meaningful international action, and it would be an abdication of leadership not to seize that opportunity.
You mentioned sanctions, so I want to ask you more about that. Obviously, Canada, I shouldn't say obviously, if people have been leading into the news, they know that Canada did announce sanctions against 2 Israeli government ministers. How significant is that?
So the sanctions just a couple of days ago against Finance Minister Smotrich and National Security Minister Ben-Gvir are long overdue. These are 2 notorious members of Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet, the most extreme members. They've been inciting violence and hatred and genocide against Palestinians in both Gaza and the West Bank for months and months and months. Should have happened ages ago. Good that it has finally happened. But it can't stop there. We did, in our letter, call for sanctions to be imposed against those 2 ministers, but we've named others, including Prime Minister Netanyahu himself. So it's the next step that I think is going to really show how seriously Canada is taking this.
Thank you very much, Alex Nee, for being with us this morning. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for the opportunity, Marcy.
It is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. We've been talking live with Alex Neve via Zoom. He's a professor of international human rights law at both the University of Ottawa and Dalhousie University. He's also one of the authors of the letters we've been talking about. He will also be delivering, by the way, the CBC Massey Lecture coming up this fall. And we have the latest on national and international news as it's developing this Thursday morning coming up here in 3 minutes. Right now, though, let's check with our local news center for our headlines here in Manitoba with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, some encouraging signs in Manitoba's wildfire emergency. People from Cranberry Portage are going home Saturday. Some other evacuated communities are also working on plans to welcome people back. One of the scientists who penned an open letter to the province this spring about inadequate research funding is happy more cash is coming for science. The province says it will top up its annual allocation for Research Manitoba. We'll hear by how much in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Partly cloudy, 11 in Winnipeg, Windsor, calm, hazy in Brandon, Windsor northeast at 8, and 8 degrees is the temperature. Thompson's mostly cloudy, -3 right now. Air quality is poor. There's a statement been issued for the Paw, Flin Flon, and Lynn Lake due to the fires. An air quality statement for Brandon, Killarney, Melita, and Verdon due to the fires in BC and Alberta. So you're having challenges there as well with the air quality. Call us if you need something to pass along, be passed along rather to commuters. Sierra Sanders will pick up the phone on the commuter line at 788-3093. So far, things are looking pretty good this morning. Sierra later will also update what's going on for the changes in traffic flow because of the Bomber game, the home opener coming up tonight. And the weather looks like it's going to be lovely for that. Partly cloudy and a low down to 10. Well, the next hour of Information Radio, what happens when clean energy solutions start to cause big problems for wildlife? We're going to hear from a local biologist who's calling for changes in the way that wind turbines are used in Manitoba, and we're going to hear what that is affecting when it comes to wildlife. Also, in the next hour of the show, the measles outbreak is still growing in Manitoba. 72 cases in May, 7 more so far this June. If you still have questions about vaccines, who should be vaccinated, and where you can access a vaccine, we're going to hear from the province's medical health officer and hear what they have to say about that. And we have a lot of comments on my Facebook page when I was asking about English and French bilingualism. There's an effort from the government right now to do a survey with you and gather input from you about how we can make Manitoba, in their words, a quote, truly bilingual province. So we're going to hear from the minister, the provincial minister tasked with doing that in the next hour of the show. Stay with us. World Report's next.
Today on The Current.
The chorus of I'm bored may not have started yet, but it's coming. The Current is here to help you get your kids through the summer holidays with the best book suggestions for the hot months ahead.
If you sit down and you read the first 3 chapters out loud with them and immerse them in the story, it becomes something that you do together.
Our kids' book panel coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. There are scenes of chaos in northwestern India. A passenger plane has crashed into a residential neighborhood. Firefighters are trying to put out flames on a multi-story building. Rescuers are looking for survivors, and ambulances are rushing people to hospital. Air India Flight 171 departed Ahmedabad for London this morning. It went down just after takeoff. 242 people were on board the Boeing 787, including 1 Canadian. And the fallout has been devastating. The CBC South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji is in Mumbai. Salima, what do we know about what happened?
Well, we know that this plane was full and it was heading for London's Gatwick Airport. Air India has confirmed that 242 passengers and crew were on board the plane. The vast majority are Indian, 169 people, but there were a lot of British nationals on board, 53, and 1 Canadian, as well as 7 people from Portugal. And there are reports of children on board as well, at least 11 kids on board. The plane signal was lost less than a minute after takeoff from Ahmedabad's airport in western Gujarat state, and it went down shortly afterwards. So it was flying quite low, and the airplane crashed into a residential area close to the airport, creating a huge fire and cloud of black smoke rising into the sky. And you can see smoldering charred debris strewn about across the area.
What is the latest on the rescue efforts?
Well, this was a heavily populated area, but that does mean also that rescue crews did get to the scene quite quickly. We've heard from a senior police officer at the scene telling reporters that the plane crashed into a doctor's hostel. Rescue efforts are underway, but at least 30 bodies have already been recovered. India's federal health minister has said that many people were killed in this crash. It is too early, of course, to know what caused the crash, but there will be a full investigation, and there will also be lots of questions here for Boeing. This plane was a 787-8 Dreamliner, one of the most modern passenger planes out there, and this is the type of plane's first ever crash.
Thank you, Salima.
You're welcome.
Salima Shivji reporting from Mumbai. The UN's nuclear watchdog says Iran is not complying with its non-proliferation obligations. The IAEA says this is the first time in 20 years that the Islamic Republic has been found non-compliant. The finding comes on the heels of the latest round of talks between U.S. and Iranian negotiators. The two sides will sit down on Sunday with tensions alarmingly high in the region. The CBC's Sasha Petrusik is following this story for us from Washington. And Sasha, what can you tell us?
Well, Marcia, even before this finding of noncompliance, there's been growing concern in Washington that tensions with Iran could explode. American diplomats and their families are being pulled out of the region out of a fear of conflict, and Iran is saying that it's about to start military drills. Now, the U.S. has been trying to come up with a deal with Iran, a pledge that Tehran would end its program to enrich uranium, which Western powers believe has been going on in secret for more than 2 decades. Iran denies that. But more talks to get that kind of a deal are scheduled to take place in Oman on Sunday. But U.S. President Donald Trump is sounding pretty pessimistic that a diplomatic agreement is possible. He was asked about it on a broadcast from the White House yesterday.
I'm getting more and more less confident about it. They seem to be delaying, and I think that's a shame, but I'm less confident now than I would have been a couple of months ago.
So what is the concern now?
Well, the biggest fear is that any setback in getting a deal with these talks and any more evidence of Iran's nuclear development could prompt Israel to launch a military attack of its own. The government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been drawing up plans to do that, but for months, word out of Washington's been that the U.S. has been holding Israel back from that, not wanting airstrikes to derail any chance for a diplomatic deal. If that deal falls apart, we could see military action.
Thank you, Sasha.
My pleasure, Marcia.
The CBC's Sasha Petrusek reporting from Washington. Some 7,000 wildfire evacuees from northern Saskatchewan will soon return home. The evacuation order for residents of La Ronge, Air Ronge, and the Lac La Ronge Indian Band is being lifted at 8 a.m. local time. As Chris Edwards reports, rainfall, favorable winds, and more resources have helped crews contain the fire in that area.
It's going to be sad going home. Sad to see what destruction the monster has done.
As he returns home, Tom Roberts is worried about what he and other evacuees will find. 11 days ago, he was forced from his community in Air Ronge, fleeing south with thousands of others in one of the largest wildfire evacuations in Saskatchewan history. For Roberts, his arrival today will be bittersweet.
I talked to a friend of mine who lives on the Meban Lake, and he says when you hit Reactor and you see the destruction the fire has caused, it'd be like driving into a different world.
The evacuee return marks a lull in a turbulent wildfire season for Saskatchewan. On Tuesday, the provincial ombudsman said the government failed to adequately communicate with evacuees as they fled south, leaving many families scrambling for groceries and accommodation. Premier Scott Moe says he understands those concerns.
We pushed ourselves and pushed the Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency and pushed the government of Saskatchewan and proper to address those concerns.
But for now, there is some relief. Rainfall and favorable winds over the last few days has slowed the fires, according to the safety agency's Brian Chartrand.
We're sitting a lot better this week than that last week, for sure. We received precipitation over the weekend. We have forecasts for cooler, cloudier weather for the next 5 to 6 days.
But Saskatchewan isn't out of the woods yet. 23 fires are still burning across the province, and only 3 are fully contained. Chris Edwards, CBC News, Regina.
A California federal court will hear a case related to U.S. President Donald Trump's use of the National Guard and Marines in Los Angeles. It is at the request of California Governor Gavin Newsom. Troops remain in the downtown core of that city. Protests against immigration raids are in their 6th day, and those continue to grow across the U.S. Fireworks are launched to add a line of police officers in riot helmets in Seattle. In Spokane, Washington, the mayor is following Los Angeles' lead and imposing a nighttime curfew. A dozen members of the Montreal Mafia linked to the infamous Rizzuto family were arrested in Quebec this morning. Radio-Canada says the arrests are a result of the largest criminal investigation in Canada. Police relied on information from convicted killer Frédéric Silva. The 45-year-old became a police informant in 2022. Over the past 3 years, officers say they have been analyzing his confessions to eliminate the mafia group from Quebec's criminal landscape. Police believe Silva is linked to 65 unsolved murder contracts since the 1980s. Turning now to closing arguments in the trial of 5 former Team Canada hockey players. The Crown Attorney says Michael McLeod repeatedly lied to police to cover up what happened on the night in question. McLeod and his teammates are accused of sexually assaulting a woman in a London, Ontario hotel room. As Karen Pauls tells us, the complainant's credibility was attacked during the defense's closing arguments.
I mean, she's a stronger person than I remember.
Rob Talek is a personal injury lawyer who helped the complainant in this case sue and get a settlement from Hockey Canada in 2022. He no longer represents the woman known as EM, but has been following the trial closely.
Is this what she agreed to when she left the bar with one individual? Absolutely not.
In her closing statements, Crown Attorney Megan Cunningham says the complainant did not voluntarily agree to the sex acts that took place in a London, Ontario hotel room in 2018. She provided 5 examples to show it was Michael McLeod, not EM, who wanted group sex that night. McLeod, Carter Hart, Dylan Dubé, Alex Formanton, and Cal Foote have all pleaded not guilty to the charges. When Cunningham continues her submissions today, she'll need to counter days of arguments from the 5 defense teams who have repeatedly said EM was not only a willing and active participant of the sex acts, she instigated them, and then told a white lie to cover it up, one they say snowballed out of control. The defense has accused EM of changing her story and lying in the witness box to push an agenda. Talek disagrees.
And every one of those individuals there contributed in some way to the environment and to what unfolded.
Justice Maria Caracia will weigh all the arguments and hand down her judgments on July 24th. Karen Pauls, CBC News, London, Ontario.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcuso. Welcome to the show this Thursday morning. Thanks for being with us live in downtown Winnipeg. You're on CBC Information Radio, 89.3 FM. Also 9:90 a.m. on the app and on YouTube, where I'm waving hello. This hour on the program, we're going to be talking about bats. We're going to hear from a biologist who says that wind turbines are causing big problems for some small nocturnal creatures like bats in Manitoba. So we'll hear more about that and what some of the solutions are that have been used in other parts of the country. Also this hour on the program, how can you find out if you're eligible for a measles booster shot? And if you do need a vaccination, what is the process in getting one? We're going to try to talk about that with the provincial medical health officer who's going to join us with some information about it. And my Facebook page is just blown up with something that we're going to be talking about at 7:40. Stay with us and I'll tell you about it in a moment. First, let's go to news headlines. Heather Wells, what's going on?
Manitoba is cracking down on the most dangerous impaired drivers, but critics say it's not enough. Under a new law, drivers will have their licenses suspended for life if they are convicted of impaired driving causing death or bodily harm twice over a 10-year period. A family of an impaired driving victim says that isn't enough. Parents in Brandon are making sure students at a local high school know they are supported. A 15-year-old student at Neelan High was seriously injured in a sword attack on Tuesday. Yesterday, parents wrote messages in chalk like Neelan Love on the sidewalk outside the school. A 16-year-old boy has been charged. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's dip into our forecast briefly here with Abby Adeyemi.
We are looking at most areas enjoying warm temperatures with plenty of sunshine. However, there's still haze from wildfire smoke drifting into the province from the south all the way up north. Air quality statements still in effect across parts of northern Manitoba into western Manitoba. In the north, we're talking about the Par and Flin Flon surrounding areas. We're looking at that smoke creating hazy skies and poor air quality. Meanwhile, in the west, from Brandon all the way down to Turtle Mountain into Surrey, we're also seeing smoke drifting in from fires in northern BC and Alberta, reducing visibility and also affecting air conditions in that region. Winnipeg at this time, sunny outside, 12 degrees. We're warming up to 24. We still have that layer of haze remaining, hanging back with us all through the day.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Next showers, by the way, not till Monday in Winnipeg. Periods of rain in Brandon on Saturday, and then on Sunday in Thompson, rain. So still a couple of days where we're not going to see the showers that we do still need for that wildfire situation. All right, let's get to what's happening on the morning commute with Sierra Sanders.
Good morning. No calls on the commuter line so far. Things are moving smoothly out there. But if there's anything slowing you down out there, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That is 204-788-3093.
Well, I mentioned my Facebook page has been going crazy. It's Marcy Marcusa, and it acts as a show page during the show. Or you can call us on the listener line. But this is what people are weighing in on. We're asking this morning, what does it mean to be a quote-unquote truly bilingual province when it comes to English and French? So the government here, the provincial government, is looking for your input on the way forward in the hopes that people can live their lives fully en français au Manitoba. Now, the minister in charge of that is going to be on the show at 7:40. So we will hear more about what the government's initiative's about. But I posed that question on my Facebook page. What would it take to make us a, quote, truly bilingual province with English and French? And people are writing in in droves. So we're going to hear more about your opinions on this, your thoughts on this, and then we will hear from the Minister, Glenn Simard, who's going to be on the program at 7:40 with us. Right now, though, to the story about turbines. Manitoba's bat population is in trouble. Now, that's according to researchers over at the University of Winnipeg, who say that wind turbines are a major part of the problem. They're calling on the province to set regulations about how and when turbines are used. Craig Willis is here to talk about it, professor of biology with the University of Winnipeg's Bat Lab. Good morning.
Hi, Marcy. Thanks for having me.
So how are wind turbines hurting bats?
Yeah, that's a terrific question, and it's a weird question. We've got 6 bat species in Manitoba. 3 of those hibernate for the winter, but 3 of them fly south, and they've just arrived back in Manitoba for the summer. Unfortunately, when they return to where they spend the winter, when they fly south again, many of them will meet their end at industrial wind turbines. We know that wind turbines across North America kill hundreds of thousands of bats of just these 3 species every year. So this isn't just a Manitoba problem, it's a North American problem. And we think with the new clean energy strategy in the province and a recent recommendation from CBC, these are the experts that use the best science to recommend the status of wildlife species across Canada. These sort of 2 things, I think it's the perfect time to really push for some better guidelines in Manitoba to match what's happening in other places across the country and across North America.
What are we looking at here? There's some pictures if people are watching our show on YouTube. Oh, we've just taken them away, but there we go. Thanks, Dylan. Dylan's popping back up there. What are we looking at here? Are these examples of the species of bats?
Exactly right. These are the 3 terrific, charismatic, beautiful bats that unfortunately meet their end at wind turbines. The hoary bat on the right, hoar, H-O-A-R, named after kind of a silvery hoar frost.
These are the kinds of bats. He looks silvery. I'm just describing for the radio listeners here. Yep.
For sure. They aren't the bats that people would typically find in their cabins. These tend to be almost exclusively in trees, occasionally a patio umbrella or a woodpile. But they're incredible animals, can fly these huge, vast distances, and of course eat tons of insects for us. So they're important as a cool and interesting part of nature, but also really important for ecosystems and the economy.
And so the other bats to the left of the one that you described, the hoary bat, there's also the one on the bottom looks like it's a slightly different shade, or maybe that's just because it's a new bat.
No, that's a different species. That's called the eastern red bat at the bottom left there. And then top left is the silver-haired bat. And the silver-haired bat is the one that folks often encounter during migration season. We get lots of them in Winnipeg. Often we get calls there's a downtown parking garage where occasionally they get confused and will hang on the side of the wall. So they, as they're flying south for the winter, they probably are using the river valley. And they end up at the Forks, downtown, all the places we like to go to.
And that other bat, the red bat, I've never seen a red bat before. It literally is red when you look at it, right? We always think bats, we think black. Or all 3 of these, though, are migratory. That's part of the point here, right? Those are the bats that are being affected. What is the solution to this challenge with wind turbines then? And what have you seen in other jurisdictions?
Yeah, terrific question. This solution's convenient. And as a conservation biologist, we oscillate between sort of optimism and despair. I'm optimistic that we can fix this problem. It's relatively easy. The bats need to find each other in the fall, and so they queue in on tall things as they're flying south, but they don't like to fly when it's windy. And so when the turbines are generating the most electricity, we don't see bat mortality, right? So the solution seems to be during a couple of months out of the year, from kind of late July to early October, maybe 2 to 3 months, we adjust how the turbines operate just at night. So not during the day, only at night. We raise what's called the cut-in speed, and that's the minimum speed at which turbines start spinning. So when it's not very windy, we basically stop the turbines spinning. And that kind of curtailment can vastly reduce mortality, can make big improvements for bats, at very low cost for wind power operators. And so other jurisdictions have brought in really clear guidelines for wind power producers. Obviously, we need any source of renewable energy we can get. We're in the middle of the climate change crisis, so wind power is an important part of that story. If we bring in good guidelines, we can have both wind power and bats. It's not zero sum.
Do other provinces then have stricter regulations than we have, or have regulation around wind turbine use?
Very much so. Alberta has led the way in the country, in fact, and for over 10 years they've had really clear guidelines. I'm asking folks to write to their MLA, write to Premier Canoe, write to the Ministry of the Environment here in Manitoba, and ask them to adopt Alberta's guidelines for wind energy. If they go to my website, willisbatlab.org, they can find instructions for how to do that, and maybe we can get this ball over the end zone line.
So let me ask you this, because we described the bats, we talked about migratory patterns and such, but people might not actually know what is killing or hurting the bats, and how significant that is, because you might imagine that they're kind of maybe running into it, or that they they can't make their way through. But I understand some of this is a change in the pressure when they're up in those areas, right?
Yeah, exactly right. A lot of bats end up colliding with, or being collided with, the turbine blades as they're attracted to these tall things they see on the horizon when they're flying south. But the turbine blades, they look like they're spinning kind of lazily around, but they're so big that they're actually spinning really quickly. And those blade tips are moving faster than you would drive on the Trans-Canada Highway, or as fast as you'd want to drive. And that results in a rapid sort of area of depressurization, of low air pressure behind the turbine blade. Some bats get caught up in that and don't even collide with the turbine blades themselves, but that leads to a kind of explosive decompression in their lungs. We call it barotrauma. And so they end up having this hemorrhaging in their lungs that leads to either drowning from their own blood or this respiratory death. And then they fall to the ground underneath the turbine. So collisions and barotrauma are two of the ways bats succumb.
That's happening. You already alluded to why we might care about bats, because some people might be saying, why do we need bats in the ecosystem? But you talked about what they do for pest control, of course, and then around farmers' fields where we often see these turbines. They help with the control there. I want to ask you, just as a last question, about the population numbers. Like what's at stake in Manitoba for the bat population if the changes don't happen? How dire is this?
Well, I mentioned we've got 6 species of bats in Manitoba. 3 of those hibernate. 2 of the hibernating species have already been listed as federally and provincially endangered because of disease. And those are hibernators. They're not affected so much by wind turbines. The migratory bats, COSUIC, this is the committee of experts that decides species status in Canada, has recommended that all 3 of the species we're talking about, these migratory species, also be listed as endangered. And that means at imminent threat of extinction or extirpation, we could lose them from Canada. And the reason for that listing recommendation is pretty much entirely wind turbines. Bats face all sorts of other threats as well, but in the last couple of decades, wind turbine use has increased, and we've lost a lot of bats because of that. That doesn't mean wind energy is bad. We need it as an important source of renewable energy.
But this is a problem.
But this is a problem, and I think it's a fixable problem at relatively low cost. We're faced with so many problems in the world today. If this is one we can actually fix, then I think that's great news for all of us.
Craig Willis, thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much, Marcy.
That's Craig Willis, professor of biology with the University of Winnipeg's Bat Lab. By the way, they did have some discussions last year with the province during a development of clean energy strategy about this. And we understand the province at that time said they would consider making some of the changes. So we'll see where they go from here.
They challenged Manitoba high school students to champion the environment with a video. Now you can see the results. The Climate Change Connections Youth Video Challenge, sponsored by CBC. Get inspired by the winning videos from River East Collegiate, St. John's Ravenscourt, and Louis Riel Arts and Technology by visiting cbc.ca/Manitoba/community to watch.
As wildfires impact our province, keep up to date with CBC.
For the latest information, listen to CBC Radio 1. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba or the CBC News app. For people who have a limited data plan or are running into spotty mobile service on the road, visit cbc.ca/lite. That's cbc.ca/LITE.
7:24 is the time right now. I want to mention what we have coming up on the fire situation. So in about an hour from now, right after 8 o'clock, we're going to talk to the chief of Pimicikamak Cree Nation for the latest on what's happening there and how soon he now thinks people could be able to return home. So they continue to watch and to wait, but we will have that coming up in the next hour of the program right after 8. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on CBC's Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and YouTube. Partly cloudy, 12 degrees, winds are calm. And let's get to morning sports because tonight, when it's partly cloudy and a low of 10, which should be okay, you might be in the stands at the Bomber game. So that's where we're starting with sports. Scott Reguera is back. Hello to you.
We're proud of the Blue Bomber name.
Hello to you.
Hang
Del
on.
Richards.
I'm getting excited.
Getting us started. Yeah, that was the intention. Game 1 tonight of the season. Bombers at home to the BC Lions. Marcy, of course, the Grey Cup's in Winnipeg this year, so this is the
Right?
year you really want to make it to the finals. Not that they haven't done so wherever it was being hosted.
We have some trouble in the final, though, so we have some history. But
That's the past.
Yeah,
It's the past. It's,
Okay,
it's a
okay.
whole new year.
By the way, I
now-
apologize for dancing on YouTube. That was really poor. Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
Don't.
Now, normally, Marcy, we'd be talking about Zach Collaros heading into this game. However, as most of our listeners will know by now, he's suspended for this first game because of a failure to report for an off-season drug test. Instead, it's Chris Strevler under center. This isn't the first time, of course, he's been thrust into a Week 1 starting role. Back in 2018, which seems even longer ago than that, fresh off of a college career at the University of South Dakota, Strevler found himself in the starter's role because of injuries to then first stringer Matt Nichols. Strevler was asked what has changed for him in the intervening years.
Just experience. I didn't even really know the CFL game at that time. I'd been up here for a couple weeks, and all of a sudden I'm the starting quarterback. And now, having the experience that I do, getting to be in different rooms, be around different people, I think is really one of the biggest areas that I've grown as. And ultimately that adds up to just learning how to be a professional. Not that I wasn't a professional before, but, what's your process, right? And that's something that you can only really learn over time.
I can't listen to him and not think of the fur coat.
Everyone's thinking about the fur coat.
Yeah, everyone's thinking of the fur coat. Strevler will have some potent weapons with which to work, led by veterans Nick Dembski and Dalton Schoen. The Bombers have a very experienced receiving core. He's also, of course, a very mobile quarterback, and that's a good thing because BC's defense is led by Matthew Betts, who's fresh off of a Canadian record for most sacks in a season. All of it starts tonight, 7:30 kickoff.
My favorite thing is just the fans, right? Also, like there's on the field, there's off the field, because people reconnect. That's now going to be what you're doing. Who do you sit by, especially if you're a season ticket holder? So
Yes,
should be a nice night. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about the pool. Summer McIntosh continues to make a splash at the Canadian swimming trials.
She has 10 meters to go, and she is reaching hard to the wall. McIntosh to the finish, and it is! She destroys it again!
That's the sound of Summer Marcy breaking her own world record in the 400-meter individual medley last night. Her closest opponent was a full 12 seconds behind her.
Wow.
It's just mind-boggling. For the Toronto teen, her third world record of the week. She set Canadian records in 2 other events. In part, she's crediting the coaching of Fred Vernu. Back in January, McIntosh attended his 3-week-long swimming camp in France, and things went, swimmingly, and she stayed.
I think I owe a lot to Fred, my coach. He's been absolutely amazing throughout this whole journey. These past few months, he's really taken me to the next level in the sport and pushed me farther. And I've gone way faster than I ever could imagine. So props to him. He's done absolutely amazing with me. And the main thing for us as well is we're having so much fun while doing it. And since we enjoy it so much, we've continued to go faster and faster because the faster I swim, the happier I am. So yeah, it's been lots of fun.
Canadian swim fans are going to have fun watching Summer at the World Championships in Singapore next month. She's considered a gold medal threat in 5 individual events. The only swimmer that's done that before is the greatest of all time, Michael Phelps. After the Worlds, Summer will begin training under Phelps' former coach, Bob Bowman, and it'll be his job to take McIntosh to the next level. If she gets to that level, she may end up being the greatest ever herself someday.
She's on her way. Honestly, you should do it because you do such great sports features. You should do a feature on all the people that were like at the top of their game, but they just happened to be in the year where Summer McIntosh was in the pool or Usain Bolt was on the track. Like those generational talents where you're like, I'm amazing, but I happen to be the same age as this person, so... I'm 12 seconds
Andre
behind.
DeGrasse, for all he's
Right?
accomplished, if Usain Bolt wasn't around,
I know.
how would we be talking about him, right?
Yeah. All right. There was greatness by a Canadian on a basketball court last night, though.
Yeah, and not Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, the Hamilton native and MVP for a change. Although Shea was good, Montreal's Benedict Mathurin was even better. He led all scorers with 27 points. Indiana beats Oklahoma City, taking a 2-1 lead in the NBA Finals. In last year's playoffs, Marcy, Mathurin didn't get to play a single game. He had a shoulder injury, and that shaped his view, getting his first taste of the postseason.
I really love playing basketball. I think it's, family and basketball for me, so... I think as much as I was out last year not being able to play, I learned a lot. Just being on the bench, being next to, the coaches who were able to run me through the game and stuff like that. So, I was able to, it was an unfortunate situation, but I was, fortunate enough to learn a lot and be ready for this year.
That's Benedict Mathurin. Locally in basketball, Marcy, a nice night as well. Canadian Samu Chatou led the Sea Bears to a win over Montreal with 20 points, including the game winner. Next up for Winnipeg, a home match against Saskatchewan on Sunday.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott.
You betcha.
That is Morning Sports on CBC with Scott Regehr. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's 12 degrees a day, much like yesterday. Sunshine to start, a few clouds rolling in this afternoon along with some haze, a high today of 24. Manitoba has a new law punishing impaired drivers who cause the most harm to human life. They will now receive a lifetime driving ban if they've been convicted of impaired driving causing bodily harm or death twice in 10 years. Before, those drivers had their licenses suspended for 10 years. Now, according to MPI data obtained by CBC News, on average, 4 people received 10-year suspensions every year. That means under this new law, roughly 4 people a year would be handed lifetime driving bans. Karen Reimer lost her daughter Jordan to a drunk driver in Winnipeg in 2022. She says punishing 4 people a year seems inconsequential.
Pretend legislation to look like Manitoba is moving towards tougher laws against impaired driving.
Justice Minister Matt Wiebe says Manitoba is working on another law with even tougher penalties. He gave no timeline on when that legislation will be introduced. Parents in Brandon are making sure students at a local high school know they are supported. A 15-year-old student at Neelan High was seriously injured in a sword attack on Tuesday. Yesterday, parents wrote messages like Neelan Love and Spartan Strong in chalk on the sidewalk outside the school. Sherry Connery's son is in grade 10 at Neelan.
I can't imagine it being my child that was injured or the parents of the people involved. There's kids that saw and heard things that they shouldn't have to, and you don't think would happen in a city this size, but we'll all come together and we'll get through it.
Brandon School Division says it is offering counseling for as long as it's needed. A 16-year-old boy faces a number of charges, including attempted murder. Some encouraging signs in Manitoba's wildfire emergency. People from Cranberry Portage are going home Saturday. Some other evacuated communities are also working on plans to welcome people back. Officials in Flin Flon say it is still too soon to know exactly when that could happen. First responders there still are tied up with the firefight, and until they are freed up, the city remains evacuated. But talk of going home brings relief to evacuee Teresa Bignell.
Oh my God, I got goosebumps. It almost made me want to cry. I said, yes. I screamed, and my boyfriend was like, what? I said, yes, we got hope.
Bignell staying in a Winnipeg hotel before that. She was at an evacuation center. Chief David Monias at Pimachikamak says they too are working to get people home, but can't yet say when. A Northern Manitoba School Division says it has experienced its most significant evacuation due to wildfires yet. Frontier School Division says about 800 of its students are currently out of school in communities including Bissett, Cross Lake, and Snow Lake. Superintendent Tyson McGilvery says it's been a busy 2 weeks trying to connect with displaced families and making sure they are supported. For now, he says they're focusing on staff and student well-being. McGilvery says they are in good shape to catch up on learning when everyone gets back home.
It's a very stressful time for families and students, and they're navigating and using their tools to make this the best that they can given the severe circumstances that they're under.
McGilvery says even more students have been affected by wildfire smoke. In the last 2 weeks, he says schools in 6 other communities have had to close at least for one day because of poor air quality. Scenes of chaos in northwestern India. Firefighters trying to put out flames on a multi-story building where a passenger plane crashed into that residential neighborhood. Rescuers looking for survivors and ambulances rushing people to hospital. Air India Flight 171 departed Ahmedabad for London this morning. It went down just after takeoff, fewer than 5 minutes after taking off. 242 people were on board the Boeing 787, including a Canadian. The police commissioner says there are no survivors on that plane. You can hear the latest on that developing story coming up on World Report at 8. Well, when you ask, sometimes you get. That is what more than 200 Manitoba scientists learned after writing a letter to the provincial government complaining about inadequate research funding. The government now says it will provide $5 million more a year to Research Manitoba. That is the agency doling out the bulk of research funding in this province. Dylan Mackay is a University of Manitoba food scientist who signed the letter and was pleasantly surprised.
The big thing about it is every bit that we get provincially makes us more competitive nationally and internationally.
The scientists wrote to the province in April after Premier Wabkanu mused about luring disaffected U.S. researchers north of the border. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
So full disclosure, Heather Wells, I was out enjoying Winnipeg last night. This is my first time at the Blue Note Park outside Times Change.
Yes.
I'm lonesome. How have I not been there before?
Do you know,
was so
I
much
haven't
fun.
been there yet. It was great, right?
It was really lovely. But what I loved is sort of being in that part of Winnipeg around those historic brick buildings and stuff, right? And then you have the signs and you feel like you're in this little pocket. It feels like a little pocket patio park where you can see live music, which is what I was doing last night, supporting my cousin. She's in the Steamers with John Sauter and Justin Dealey, one of our former colleagues and current colleagues. And they've been in that band for 20 years. So I finally got out to check her out on stage and it was so much fun. Yeah.
That's amazing. I heard that you were also heard singing.
Yes, which is why my voice sounds a little bit lower today. But good fun and a beautiful night for it as well. Like a little bit chilly, but there's nothing wrong with that because you throw in a sweater and jeans and it's just a lovely night. Yeah,
absolutely.
Good night. We need that for tonight, too, of course, if you're going to the Bombers game. So we'll check back in with Heather at the top of the clock for more headlines as they develop. But right now, let's do the weather check. It's time for your regional forecast on the morning show with Abby Adiyemi.
Good morning once again. Special air quality statement in place across parts of northern Manitoba and western Manitoba this morning. In the north, from the Par and surrounding areas, we're seeing smoke from local fires still causing hazy skies and shifting air quality, while in the western part from Brandon through Turtle Mountain all the way to Cerise, we're seeing smoke drifting in from northern BC and Alberta, and it's also reducing visibility and bringing poor air conditions, which can change quickly. So it's a good idea to limit time outdoors and take care if you're planning any activities when this smoke moves into your region. However, across the province, it's going to be sunny south and smoky north, and the skies will stay mostly clear with hazy conditions shifting with the wind directions. In the Red River Valley at this time, Winnipeg and surrounding areas, we're looking at warm and bright conditions. Right now, 12 degrees with sunshine breaking through. We'll see a sunny morning and then turning to a mix of sun and clouds by the afternoon period with hazy skies continuing. Winds will be coming from the north and it will get windy at some point. Today's high, 24 degrees. When that game starts at 7:30, we should be around 21, 22 degrees. We're going to hit 24 around 3 3:44 p.m. For the Pembina Valley region, including Morden, Winkler, Altona, Morris, down to the Emerson borders, we're seeing current temperatures around 15 degrees. Sunny also there. Expect a mix of sun and clouds today. Highs will hit 24. Conditions in the Westman region. Brandon is at 10 degrees and sunny. The sky will stay mostly sunny today. Some local smoke still going to swing in during the day. Winds will be coming from the southeast. We see high around 23 degrees. Dauphin is currently at 7. It's clear there. Mainly sunny skies also in the forecast today. Temperatures reaching 21. In Gimli, we're seeing 13 degrees there. The Interlake region is going to see mainly sunny conditions today also. A bit of haze in the air. It will feel windy at times, and highs for that part of the province would be around 21. Now, with track conditions in the northern part of the province where we have that smoke in the powerful influence surrounding areas, tracking it all the way to Gillam, we're seeing temperatures around 7 degrees now. It's actually cloudy up in the northern part of the province. We will see a mix of sun and cloudy conditions. Smoke still going to be hanging around for most of the day. The winds will shift towards the northwest, and it's going to stay mild. Highs will be around 15 degrees. Thompson still below zero at this point, -1 under mostly cloudy conditions. Expect a mix of sun and clouds there, warming up to 14 later. Then further north in Churchill, right now 7 degrees, also mostly cloudy there. The sun will break through later. The skies become sunny later by the midday period, and we should see some breezy conditions from the west. That would ease by the afternoon period. Highs 15. So sunny and hazy across the south, smoky up north. That's what we get today.
So many bears out right now. In Lac du Bonnet, people were posting pictures of bears and cubs. And up north, I thought of it because Churchill yesterday, Joe Stover, who we've had on our program a number of times, he's lived in Churchill for years. But Joe was posting, a polar bear and a cub sighted in Churchill yesterday out on the shores. So lots of activity up that way right now. All right, let's see what's going on in traffic. And Sierra actually has a bomber traffic report as well. Good morning.
Yes, I do. First, I'll start off with a call that I got on the commuter line. I got that from Mitchell. And I did get this a couple of minutes ago. So call if you have any updates. But there was a stopped truck in the center lane, northbound Main at St. Mary's. So if you have an update on that, please feel free to give me a call. And as we've been talking about, the bomber home opener is tonight. It sounds like it's going to be a lovely evening. But something to keep in mind is there is quite a bit of construction on southbound Pembina as you head towards Princess Auto Stadium. So that's the Pembina Bridge running over Abinogi-Meekinaw there. There's lots of construction there. Lanes are kind of all over the place. And then as well on University Crescent as you head towards the stadium. So quite a few backups there. So keep that in mind as you make your way to the game tonight, and then also maybe have a little bit more patience for your fellow drivers, as well as the shuttles that take you to and from the game. There's a lot of those that run on game days. So keep that in mind. If things are running a little bit longer, that's probably the reason. If there's anything else slowing you down out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Sierra. Well, next on the show, Parlez-vous français? As you may have heard, the Manitoba government is asking for your thoughts and your ideas about how to create an effective roadmap, they say, to make Manitoba a, quote, truly bilingual province in English and French. Municipal and Northern Affairs Minister Glenn Simard is the minister responsible for Francophone affairs. He joined me yesterday in studio to talk about their initiative. Why is this needed, this consultation?
Well, the consultation is needed because I was tasked by the Premier in my mandate letter to make Manitoba a truly bilingual province. And before we can do that, I think it was important for us to consult Manitobans and what that means for them. Because it can mean something different for an organization, a family, an individual. And we're in a bilingual country. Canada's a bilingual country. Manitoba's founding father, Louis Riel, was bilingual, and one of his visions for Manitoba was bilingualism. So
we know we have challenges here, being bilingual. The city of Winnipeg, just last November, CBC reported they're having difficulty offering French language services to bilingual residents. They did a report on this. And the numbers for the city, Councillor Madillard calling it a gap in what they can offer. And there's only 5% of the city employees at the end of 2022 that were bilingual, according to city documents. Is part of this how people get serviced in, en français in Manitoba, and also, how they do their work in their individual offices?
Yeah, part of it is that, but part of it is how you live your life in French. And we know that when an active offer is made, people will select French as that language. And the more that we can provide that offer, the more we can provide the opportunities for people to see their healthcare provider in French, or to have better access to French language education, and as well as to have court cases heard in French. Those are challenges, but the more that we can do those types of things, the better, the more people will use it.
When those gaps are present and you can't do those, things or live your life that way in French, what is the impact on the individual who is a Francophone Manitoban?
Yeah, well, I'll use myself as a perfect example. Like, I grew up in a Francophone community called St. Lazare, and we were, for 150 kilometers around us, there was no other French community. And I didn't have a high school to go to in French. And so we had to leave our community to go to high school, never mind high school in French. So we know that school and community living in French is a big part of how you retain that language. And language is a big part of the like when we're talking about French culture, language is key to that. And you lose a language, you lose everything. So the more that we can have that present and being used, the better we can live out that dream of a bilingual province.
Listeners have been writing in about this, actually, since you reached out to ask Manitobans about it. So I know you're just at the stage where you're, gathering these different thoughts. But I want to put some of the comments to you. Mo Lesser wrote in, teach conversational French in school rather than just learning to conjugate verbs, and teach it as a mandatory subject in K-12 in all schools, not just some. Mo writes, my kids have never taken French here. What are your thoughts on more sort of mandatory inclusion of French and maybe conversational French, as he points out?
Well, I was a French immersion teacher for 27 years. So obviously I agree a lot with what Mo has to say there, where we make basic French optional. Which 12-year-old would choose that over maybe going to shop, right? And so a lot of it has to do with what a school can offer, a school division can offer. But I think that learning a language is extremely important. It's part of our national identity. I tell a story about my son when he was greeted in the U.S. Where he goes to school by someone who was not from Canada. And she found out that he was Canadian. Very first question she asked him, do you speak French? Because it's part of our national identity. And I'd like to be a part of our provincial identity as well. We are a multicultural province, but we were also founded on the French language as well.
There is some, to the multicultural province point, there are some comments here that push back on why we need to look further at this around French in Manitoba. The 2021 census showed 3.5% of Manitobans spoke Tagalog. At that time, in that census, 2.8% spoke French. Some listeners are writing in talking about that. Peter Walgamot wrote in and said there's a recognition of the value of being multilingual in the population and attitudes toward it, but he taught in a small rural school, he said, and he had over 20 languages represented. So he's wondering whether or not some of the other languages should come to the forefront as well, or if there's a way to do that. Con Arthurson wrote in from Fox Lake, I don't want to learn and speak another foreign language, he puts it. I want to learn my mother tongue. He is Indigenous. I believe he speaks Korean. Is there pushback? Even though French is an official language in this country, given how multicultural Manitoba is and that there's other speakers coming to the forefront when you look at the numbers? Well,
I think language learning and language presence in a community enriches it. And the enrichment of French isn't at the detriment of another. When we look at European nations where being multilingual, knowing 4 languages is kind of like the norm. And I watched that F1 series on Netflix, and then I'm amazed by drivers who switch between Italian, German, French, and English all in the same 5 minutes. So part of what the consultation is doing is saying, okay, well, what is this all about? What does this mean? What does this mean for the French community? What does this mean for the Manitoban community? Because Canada is a bilingual country. And I think that is something that we need to remember, that French language rights are protected in the Charter. So the more that we can live that Charter, live that vision of a united Canada, part of what it makes our identity, those people that you referenced before, they're part of the national identity. So building up French, it doesn't mean at the expense of another. I think it actually creates a citizenry that appreciates language, appreciates culture, and language learning at a young age, whether it's French, also is conducive to learning more languages later on in life.
So setting it up as a juxtaposition is not helpful.
No, I think it's beneficial. I mean, if we want to do something with Indigenous languages in terms of in schools, how can we take the lessons learned in the French immersion system, which is extremely popular and is extremely successful? How can we take lessons learned from there to be able to build up those Indigenous languages?
Minister Simard, thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks. Merci.
Merci. Municipal and Northern Affairs Minister Glenn Simard, who is also responsible for Francophone Affairs. He was here in studio with us yesterday when I spoke with him. If you want to weigh in on how you feel about the initiative to make Manitoba a, quote, truly bilingual province in English and French, or where gaps have been if you're trying to live your life here en français, weigh in with all points of view at 204-788-3205, or you can join an already robust conversation on my Marcy Marcusa Facebook page. By the way, though, if you want to offer your insight to the province for their official survey, first of all, you can make remarks, suggestions, and send documents to Bilingual Manitoba, bilang, at gov.mb.ca. That email address can be used if you want to participate as well in targeted in-person consultations, which the province is also doing. And to fill out the survey, the Engage MB survey, you can visit engagemb.ca/a-bilingual-provence.
It's an honor to have you at the White House. The stories that matter.
The opportunity is in the partnership.
As they happen.
There are some places that are never for sale.
And what they mean to you. But never say never. Never say never.
For news you can trust, stay with CBC News.
Still ahead on the show, we have something fun coming up. Duct tape. It's often used to make quick repairs, but one Winnipegger has gotten stuck on another use. We're going to hear how he creates intricate portraits by layering colored duct tape. Really cool. So that's coming up for you after 8. You're on CBC's Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you for being here with our team this morning. It's partly cloudy in the city. It's 12 degrees. Brandon is sunny now. It's 10. Thompson mostly cloudy and -1. So it is cooler up north this morning for sure. Well, next on the show, the number of confirmed measles cases in Manitoba has jumped again. We now have 98 confirmed cases and 4 probable cases. That is up from seven from May's numbers. Last month, the Manitoba Public Health expanded their vaccine eligibility for infants aged 6 months in some cases. Earlier, they also recommended that adults born before 1970 receive a booster shot. I believe that should read after 1970, and encouraged others to make sure they're fully vaccinated against the highly transmissible virus. So how do you know if you're protected, and how easy is it to get this shot or booster? Dr. Santina Lee is Manitoba's Medical Officer of Health, and she joins us now for some clarity. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. How are you?
I'm well. So why don't we start with what I said there in terms of the ages of people that should be considering looking into whether or not they need a booster or full vaccination?
Well, I wouldn't say that there's a specific age, and actually we're recommending that everyone check their records and make sure that they are fully up to date as per their recommendations. So anyone who was born after 1970 it should have documented 2 doses of a measles-containing vaccine to be considered fully vaccinated. Anyone who was born before 1970s, at that time, measles infection was still circulating quite commonly. And so it's likely that if you were born before 1970s, you were infected with measles. And so there is no additional vaccine that is recommended for those individuals in general to be considered protected against measles.
So it is, in fact, it was correct what I said in the introduction. If you're born after 1970, what should you understand, and how can you know? How can you access your records?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in terms of accessing your records, there's a few different ways to get it. One of them, if you're tech savvy, you can actually just go right online to the Manitoba website for your vaccine records, and you can request it through the online method. If that way doesn't work for you, there are some other options. That includes going to whoever provides you primary health care, asking them, such as your doctor, what your vaccine records are, or going and asking your pharmacist. As well, you can ask your local public health office. They're very happy to help and get that information for you.
I understand there's a blood test that can tell if you have immunity. Can you tell me how that works, and if you want to get tested to see if you have it through a blood test, do you go to your primary healthcare provider, or can you request that at a minor injury clinic if you need it?
Yeah, so in general, we're not recommending that people get the blood test. There's a few reasons for that. First of all, our records of vaccination are pretty good. They date back to the late 80s. And so if you were in Manitoba or born in Manitoba around the late 80s or after that, your vaccine records should be available. And of course, it is a little bit trickier if you move to Manitoba before that or after that. However, if you were living in Manitoba as of the late 80s and after that, our vaccine records are available. And so first check those, okay? And if they're not there, if there's no records, rather than suggesting that people get a blood test, we're recommending that you just get up to date with your vaccines. And so that depends a little bit in terms of your age and what we are recommending. So if you are an adult that was born in or after 1985 and say you have no records of being vaccinated, then you're eligible to receive 2 doses of a measles-containing vaccine. If you were born between 1970 and 1984 and there's no documentation, you don't have records, and you're not certain if you were vaccinated, then you can get 1 dose of a measles-containing vaccine. So that's really important. Now, the other thing to mention, yes, there is that blood test, but the blood test, all it does is measure one part of our immune system. It measures antibodies, whether they are present or not in that part of the blood sample that we have taken. And so, the levels or the amounts that are there, that just only tells one part of the story of our immune system. And so that's why, rather than relying on that, and that means making an appointment, go getting blood work, waiting for the results, rather than waiting for all that, we're recommending check your records. If there's no documentation or you're pretty sure you weren't vaccinated, then rather instead get vaccinated and up to date.
Is there any harm in getting getting vaccinated if you haven't been able to find your records, and in fact you did have immunity?
Yeah, so if there's uncertainty, there is no, in terms of the risk and benefits, there's not a big amount of concern in terms of if you accidentally, let's say, got an extra dose because those records weren't there. We know that the risk are much less than the benefits that are available to making sure that you are protected.
Is all this information being disseminated from the province to individual doctors, or is there, because there was really clear sort of communication, of course, during COVID and around vaccinations, or because this is a different type of a situation? Of course, most people are vaccinated. It's a different thing. It's not an emerging virus. It's something we understand. But is the communication being effectively communicated to doctors? Should all doctors understand that they should not be, as you said, sending you for blood tests, that it should be about accessing those vaccination records?
Yeah, so we've been for the last number of months trying to disseminate the message, let all doctors, primary health care providers know about the situation. We started talking about this even before there were cases in Manitoba, just as we were seeing that the number of measles cases were rising in other provinces in Canada. So we have a way that as public health, we routinely, when we need to, send out messages to physicians, but we also work with our other partners to try to get this message out, as well as update make sure that our website is up to date, and create resources and tools that we share with other physicians and other people providing primary health care, so that when someone comes to visit them and they're asking questions, that hopefully they're equipped with the tools and the resources to know how to best provide care.
You've been very helpful this morning, Dr. Lee. We really appreciate your time on CBC.
Thanks for having me.
That's Dr. Santina Lee via Zoom, Manitoba's Medical Officer of Health. Let's go to Heather Wells, who is here with our news headlines out of the province.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's cracking down on the most dangerous impaired drivers, but critics say it's not enough. Under a new law, drivers will have their licenses suspended for life if they are convicted of impaired driving causing death or bodily harm twice in 10 years. A silver alert has been issued for a missing 79-year-old man in Winnipeg. Pedro Amaya was last known to be in the area of McPhillips and Inkster around 7:15 last night. He was driving a red Honda CR-V. We have his photo up on our website. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In Winnipeg, 12 degrees, partly cloudy. We're heading for 24 in the sunshine today. Air quality affected in the Paw, Wanless, Westray, Flin Flon, and Lynn Lake due to fires in the north. Air quality because of fires in Alberta and BC is affected in Brandon, Neepawa, Killarney, Melita, and the Verdon area this morning as well. Coming up, speaking of the fires, we're going to have a conversation with Chief David Monius of Pimachikamak. He says he's watching and waiting. He is going to talk to us about how soon he thinks people might be able to return home. And then we'll have that lovely story this morning, super fun, about duct tape and someone that creates intimate portraits by layering up the different pieces. It's all after 8.
I'm Jill Deacon in for Tom Power. Robert Lepage is a legend of the Canadian stage. Robert will tell you why he wanted to set Shakespeare's Macbeth in the world of 90s biker gangs.
Society that still operates according to medieval laws and rules.
And why a work that's over 400 years old still feels so modern.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
The chorus of I'm bored may not have started yet, but it's coming. The Current is here to help you get your kids through the summer holidays with the best book suggestions for the hot months ahead. Our kids book panel coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. There are scenes of chaos in northwestern India. A passenger plane has crashed into a residential neighborhood. Firefighters are trying to put out flames on a multi-story building. Rescuers are looking for survivors inside, and ambulances are rushing people to hospital. Air India Flight 171 departed Ahmedabad for London this morning. It went down just after takeoff. 242 people were on board, including one Canadian. The police commissioner says it appears there are no survivors on the plane. More than 100 bodies have been recovered from the scene. The CBC's South Asia correspondent, Salima Shivji, is in Mumbai. Salima, what do we know about what happened?
Well, we know that this plane was full and it was heading for London's Gatwick Airport. Air India has confirmed that 242 passengers and crew were on board the plane. The vast majority are Indian, 169 people, but there were a lot of British nationals on board, 53, and one Canadian, as well as 7 people from Portugal. And there are reports of children on board as well, at least 11 kids on board. The plane's signal was lost less than a minute after takeoff from Ahmedabad's airport in western Gujarat state, and it went down shortly afterwards. So it was flying quite low, and the airplane crashed into a residential area close to the airport, creating a huge fire and cloud of black smoke rising into the sky. And you can see smoldering charred debris strewn about across the area.
What is the latest on the rescue efforts?
Well, this was a heavily populated area, but that does mean also that rescue crews did get to the scene quite quickly. We've heard from a senior police officer at the scene telling reporters that the plane crashed into a doctor's hostel. Rescue efforts are underway, but India's federal health minister has said that many people were killed in this crash. It is too early, of course, to know what caused the crash, but there will be a full investigation, and there will also be lots of questions here for Boeing. This plane was a 787-8 Dreamliner, one of the most modern passenger planes out there, and this is that type of plane's first ever crash.
Thank you, Salima.
You're welcome.
Salima Shivji reporting from Mumbai. The United Nations nuclear watchdog is formally accusing Iran of not complying with its nuclear obligations. And it comes as U.S. and Iranian negotiators prepare to discuss a nuclear deal this Sunday. There are reports Israel is ready to launch operations on Iran, and Tehran could retaliate by striking U.S. bases in the region. Crystal Gomansing has more from Jerusalem.
There are within the Israeli establishment people who have said that Netanyahu is a chronic bluffer and will never.
Still, Anshel Pfeffer, an Israeli author and contributor to The Economist, says Israel could launch strikes against Iran, especially after last year's counter-operation proved Israel could hit Iran's nuclear sites without being shot down. Talk of an Israeli strike and removing U.S. personnel from the region could be a pressure tactic to advance nuclear deal talks along between the U.S. and Iran.
Well, they are being moved out because it could be a dangerous place. And
U.S. President Donald Trump again last night said Iran can't have nuclear weapons.
We'll see what happens, but they are better.
With tensions rising around the Middle East, new reports of violence against the private aid group, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The U.S. and Israeli-backed organization says Hamas attacked a bus in Han Yunis carrying about 24 workers Wednesday night. GHF reports the unprovoked attack led to several people being killed and others injured. In a statement issued Wednesday night, it said for days Hamas has openly threatened our team, our aid workers, and the civilians who receive aid from us. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, Jerusalem.
The Canadian Climate Institute says Canada has a chance to pull ahead in the critical mineral race, but production needs to speed up, and it says investors do not have a sense of security. Marissa Beck is research director at the Canadian Climate Institute. It released a report today with a list of policy recommendations.
So our modeling shows that to fully meet Canada's potential and deliver on its critical minerals opportunities, new investment between $30 billion and $65 billion must flow over the next 15 years.
Her organization is recommending investors and governments work out a deal. So if the mineral price falls below an agreed upon number, the company gets a subsidy. And when the mineral value goes above a set price, the company pays the government back. Another American city is imposing a nighttime curfew. It is a response to the growing protests against U.S. President Donald Trump's immigration raids. Lisa Brown is the mayor of Spokane, Washington. She says the decision to impose it was a tough one.
I know there is tremendous fear amongst our local immigrant and refugee community. My heart goes out to families who are separated or are fearful of what might happen to them in their workplace or as they proceed about their lives in Spokane.
In Los Angeles, protests are entering a sixth day. But as Steve Futterman tells us, the demonstrations are getting calmer.
For the second straight night, downtown LA has been under a curfew, and it seems to be having the desired effect. Things weren't totally peaceful yesterday. There was one confrontation in the late afternoon between police and protesters at City Hall. Flashbangs were used as law enforcement tried to break up the crowd. But it was by far the most peaceful day since the protests began. And when the 8 p.m. curfew went into effect, most people left. Many, though, vowed to return.
Well, the National Guard said they're going to be here for at least 30 days, so I'd say as long as they're here.
LA officials remain highly critical of the way Homeland Security agents are going after and detaining undocumented immigrants. Mayor Karen Bass.
When you raid Home Depots and workplaces, when you tear parents and children apart, you're not trying to keep anyone safe. You're trying to cause fear and panic.
Yesterday, one of the raids involved a church. The pastor of the church tried to intervene, but was rebuffed by the ICE immigration agent.
This will stand in my mind when we said we don't want this in our property. This gentleman just shouted, the whole country is our property. When someone tells that to you with a weapon in their hands, that was a very clear message.
A number of those involved in the confrontations have now been charged with crimes committed during the protests. The U.S. attorney here says, expect more.
We're coming after all these people. So let's be clear. This is the beginning, not the end.
Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has now named his replacements to sit on a key panel of vaccine advisors. He abruptly fired all 17 committee members earlier this week.
We're bringing people on who are credentialed scientists, who are highly credentialed physicians, who are going to do evidence-based medicine.
The panel's job is to help shape immunization policy in the United States. Kennedy himself is a vaccine skeptic, but he had promised he would not appoint what he called ideological anti-vaxxers. Of the 8 new names he announced yesterday, 4 of them have spoken out against vaccines in some way. Here in Canada, the backlog of surgeries created by the COVID-19 pandemic has been cleared. But a new report from CIHI has found Canadians are still experiencing longer wait times for certain surgeries. Health reporter Christine Birak explains why.
New data shows more knee, hip, and cancer surgeries are being done in Canada, but more patients are also waiting longer.
It seems maybe counterintuitive at first.
Cheryl Chewy is with the Canadian Institute for Health Information. She says the data reflects an aging population, more complex patients, and staffing problems.
Shortages that we're seeing in the health workforce. So all these factors together affect the wait times.
The data points out 26% more hip replacement surgeries were done last year, and 68% of patients had their surgery within about 6 months. But in 2019, it was 75%. The numbers are similar for knee replacements, and the wait for certain cancer surgeries went up 1 to 5 days.
We're trending in a direction that we don't want to see.
Dr. Olufemi Ayeni heads the Canadian Orthopedic Association. He says centralizing wait lists, recruiting retired healthcare workers, and more surgeons working in teams can help speed things up.
Our policy and position has always been, let's get patients access to care, let's improve the current system, and I think those efficiencies will make a difference.
I got a whole summer to limp around, stumble around with
77-year-old Jules Tupker lives in Thunder Bay, Ontario. He's been waiting over 6 months for a hip replacement. He says politicians knew Canadians were aging, but did little to invest in healthcare workers.
That's disappointing, and this is not something that just all of a sudden happened.
He worries he won't soon be able to walk while he waits for his surgery. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Morning Show Information Radio on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. It's going to be sunny today, pretty nice in Winnipeg. We do have air quality issues in parts of the province because of fires in Alberta and Saskatchewan and here in Manitoba. Abby will run down the list and what that looks like today in just a moment. We also are going to have a live interview in moments with Chief David Monius of Pimicikamak Cree Nation. He's going to join us for the latest on the wildfire situation and also his assessment of how soon he thinks people will be able to return home. Now, to be clear here, there's no specific timeline yet, but we're going to find out exactly what he has to say about to the questions he's been asked. In addition, this half hour on the program, we have a bit of a fun item for you. We're going to meet a Winnipeg artist whose medium isn't paint, it's not pencils, it's a common household item used to make snappy repairs. So stay tuned for that. Let's get to Heather Wells. She has developing stories. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the family of a victim of impaired driving calls it pretend legislation. Manitoba has a new law punishing impaired drivers who cause the most harm to human life. They now will receive a lifetime driving ban if they're convicted of impaired driving causing bodily harm or death twice in 10 years. According to MPI data obtained by CBC, on average, 4 people received 10-year suspensions every year, meaning roughly 4 people a year would get a lifetime driving ban. Karen Reimer says that seems inconsequential. We're going to hear more from her. As well, a silver alert has been issued for a missing 79-year-old man in Winnipeg. Pedro Amaya was last known to be in the area of McPhillips and Inkster around 7:15 last night. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
To the forecast now with Abby Adiemi.
Across the province, we're looking at sunny conditions in the south and smoky up north. Skies will stay mostly clear with hazy conditions and shifting winds all through the day. We do have that special air quality statement still in effect for northern and the western part of the province due to wildfire. Smoke visibility and air quality may change quickly. So I'd advise if you have breathing problems, you should limit your outdoor times if possible. Winnipeg right now 12 degrees with some sunshine outside. Expect sunshine this morning, turning to a mix of sun and clouds with hazy conditions hanging around. It will be warm and breezy at some point. We'll see highs around 24. I don't see rain in the forecast today, and by the evening we'll see temperatures deepen to around 21 degrees at game time with mild winds. Overnight, partly cloudy conditions. We'll see temperatures drop further to around 10. Across board, we're seeing temperatures around 10 to 15 degrees in the southern region, and up north we're seeing -1 to 7 degrees in the north. So in summary, sunny and hazy in the south, smoky in the north. Winnipeg at 12 degrees at this time.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
With the commute today and tonight, here is Sierra Sanders.
Good morning. It's been a pretty quiet morning on the commuter line, so things must be moving pretty smoothly out there. As we've been talking about, the Bomber Home Opener is tonight, and there is quite a bit of construction as you head towards Princess Audio Stadium. First, you have southbound Pembina on the Pembina Bridge over Abinogi-Mi'kmaq there, and then University Crescent as you head towards the stadium. Keep that in mind as you make your way to the game tonight and home as well. Have a little patience with your fellow commuters. Keep an eye out for bikers. You know, fans do utilize the bike valet there and expect it to be a little slow. Still a little time in the show, so if there's something slowing you down out there, you can give me a call on the commuter line, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Sierra. Well, I want to nod to something here that you were writing in about a lot this morning on my Facebook page. This morning and yesterday, I posted yesterday. We spoke in the last half hour on the show with Municipal and Northern Affairs Minister Glenn Simard. We heard that conversation with him. He was in studio yesterday, and we spoke with him. He's the minister responsible for Francophone Affairs. He was talking about an initiative that the Manitoba government has started. They're looking for your thoughts and ideas in a survey and in calls and emails to create what they're calling an effective roadmap to make Manitoba a, quote, truly bilingual province in English and French. And so we are checking with, we spoke with him. They want to check with you. And we already are checking with you because we asked you what you think of this. So I'm going to share some of the comments here. Jermaine Brass wrote in, I'd like to see Indigenous languages at the forefront, especially in preschool, nursery, kindergarten, and elementary, much like what they did with the Maori language out in New Zealand. They were able to revitalize their languages this way. I think it's absolutely horrendous that English and French-speaking people continue to think that they are the dominant culture when in fact they are not. So that's Jermaine's point of view. Vic Pereira is saying, I think it requires political will to designate Manitoba as bilingual. We have made a small step in recognizing many people speak other languages other than English. We now say English is an additional language instead of English as a second language. We cannot change the harms that were done in the past, but we can do better in the future. There is already an appetite to learn French. There will be some resistance, of course, which happens every time an English track school changes places with a French immersion school, because the first has a significant amount of underutilized space, while the latter can no longer accommodate the demand. So that's Vic Pereira's point of view. Cheryl Christine Pearson writes in, while political will may be able to designate our province as bilingual and promote French language to a point, I don't think political will can make us truly bilingual. Language develops organically. If people are not speaking a language among their family or friends, then language cannot become an essential part of the fabric of our society. It cannot be forced. That is Cheryl's point of view writing in. And then, there's so many comments here. There's probably 80 plus comments here. But I also want to share Sadie Levois writing into us here, writing, it's not a priority to have more French speakers. It is a priority to have mother tongue Indigenous languages to be supported to the same par as French and English. So lots of really thoughtful comments here from all kinds of perspectives. And we'd love it if you'd weigh in as we continue to look at this story. So you can weigh in on my Facebook page. You can also email us at radio893@cbc.ca, or you can call us at 204-788-3205. 8:16 is the time right now on CBC, and we're just having a challenge reaching Chief David Monius this morning, and so we'll continue to try that. But on the show next, we're going to move to that piece I mentioned about a common household item. It is something you might have on hand at home in case something needs a quick fix, but for one Winnipegger, duct tape has an even greater purpose as a medium for creating really detailed portraits. And I hope you also listen and maybe consider watching this item on our YouTube channel so you can see exactly how detailed we're talking about. This is a piece from CBC Manitoba's community reporter, Shanley Vidal.
Oh, that was a good one.
That's Levi Sobering strategically pulling a layer of bright green duct tape off his canvas.
It's almost like paint by colors, but you're removing tape instead.
While some people might use duct tape for repairs, he uses it to create detailed portraits that range from superheroes to musicians to athletes.
As you get closer, you can see all the lines in all the tape, and you can just see how intricate it is. And you know, it's hard to believe that something like this can be made out of duct tape. This is Gord Downey, a Canadian legend, and also one of his most iconic pictures with the Jaws shirt. Pretty much black, white, and gray, but a little splash of color for something to pop. I start with a 1/4-inch board of MDF. Doesn't look like wood anymore, but I layer tape in different directions. So I got white and then gray and green, all the other colors. And I draw the image on with a projector, and then I reference the picture on a laptop while I cut through all the layers and then peel out the top layer until I find the color that I'm looking for. This is Willie Jefferson. This is a player for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I did tag him on Instagram, and I made one of him before this one of him holding the Grey Cup, which we've talked over Instagram about it. So I'm pretty sure he's aware. And this little spot, and then we're good to go. I definitely look at different colors of gray duct tape and think, oh man, how can I use that? Or I don't think of it as like a tool necessarily anymore. It's more so like, how can I incorporate that color into a project? The other tricky thing is trying to dig in with a knife. Sometimes you can scratch up the layer below or puncture it. So I gotta be very careful when I'm scooping the tape off. It's kind of what I do whenever I have a spare half an hour or an hour or 2 hours to work on something and, you know, take my mind off of everything else. The white almost wanted to come off, so in that case, if that happens, I just go from the other corner and hopefully it works better from that side. Sometimes they take 4 hours, sometimes they take 10 hours, sometimes they take 20 hours. The longest one that I've made was a portrait of Bob Marley, and that took 24 hours.
Levi Sobering has created nearly 400 works of duct tape art. Most of them have been sold or given away, but there's one in particular that Levi is hoping to hold on to.
Eminem's one of my favorite artists, so I had a little bit of downtime and I said, why not make one for myself? Why not treat myself?
Would you sell it?
I would. It would just, you know, I think it would just have to be at the right price.
Shanley Vidal, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Incredible. I mean, if you're, for the radio listeners' benefit here, if you look at these things, they look like sketch pencil drawings, the ones where he doesn't use colored duct tape because he's using that gray duct tape, you know, that flat silvery kind of color that's common with duct tape. And then that scalpeling that he does, that is so particular as he draws in little lines and moves off little slivers of the tape to reveal white below. And then he's creating that dimensional look of a portrait. He also uses the colors, as Shanley mentioned. So with the Hulk, there's green in the background with that gray tape. That's just incredible work. Levi Sobering has only made, by the way, one other portrait for himself, and that was of a Pokemon character, he says. So if you want to watch this story, as Shanley Vidal was out as well with a camera, please check out cbc.ca/Manitoba or go to our YouTube channel.
So now we got cars flying in the air?
Dramatic car stunts are not just the stuff of movies, they're also the stuff of car commercials.
The case for precision German engineering rests on our tires.
But sometimes the stunt doesn't go as planned. crazy automobile stunt commercials on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on demand on CBC Listen.
It is right now 8:22 a.m. and as you've been hearing all morning on international news and on World Report in our national news, we are watching what is happening in that devastating plane crash in Western India. Now, Air India Flight 171 bound for London went down in a residential area of Ahmedabad. And that was shortly after takeoff from the city's international airport there. Many ambulances and firefighting teams continue to try to put out the fires at the crash site and assist survivors. We do know that 242 people were on board, including one Canadian. The CBC South Asia correspondent Salima Sivji is in Mumbai. She's been following the story. There's developments, of course, as we're speaking. There's things developing. But here's what she had to say at her last report. This is just within the last hour as details continue to stream in about the crash.
We do know that this plane, a Boeing 787 plane, was heading to London's Gatwick Airport and that it was a full flight. The vast majority of those on board are Indian nationals. About 169 Indians were on board. There were a lot of British nationals on board as well, of course, seeing as this plane was heading to London's Gatwick Airport. 53 Britons on board, 1 Canadian, 7 Portuguese nationals. And we know from reports at the scene that the plane signal was lost about a minute after the plane took off. So the plane was really flying quite low when the crash happened, moments after that signal was lost. We also know that the crash happened in a residential area very close to the airport. That basically, created that huge billowing smoke coming out of the area. There's smoldering debris all around as well. It is a very heavily populated area. And I do want to mention a little bit more about that tweet that we just heard from India's Prime Minister. It was just released a short time ago. I'm going to read the entirety of it to you. He wrote, "The tragedy in Ahmedabad has stunned and saddened us. It is a heartbreaking beyond words. In this sad hour, my thoughts are with everyone affected by it." And he does say he's been in touch with ministers and authorities who are working to assist those affected on the ground. Obviously, the passengers and crew on this plane, but as well as the people affected in the area where the plane went down. Many of the injured are being transported to local hospitals. We heard from a senior police official on the scene telling reporters that basically the plane went down on a doctor's hostel, so a hostel full of doctors. We don't know how many injured were killed at that precise point, but we do already know from rescue workers at least 30 bodies have been recovered. That number is, of course, sure to rise in this deadly accident. We also know that from India's federal health minister that many people have been killed in this crash. Those are the terms that he is using. So this is just very much the early stages of the rescue effort, and they will be ongoing, deep into the night here in Ahmedabad. But we know that this is already a very dire situation, and many people are rushing to the area to see if they can get any information about, their loved ones.
So that was a report from CBC South Asia correspondent Salima Sivji reporting from Mumbai. She was talking about the plane crash today in the Western India city of Ahmedabad. 242 people on board, including 1 Canadian, and this is very much still developing this morning. So more in our local casts with updates, but then also, of course, in our national news and online at cbc.ca about the situation. It is in Winnipeg, 14 degrees, and we do have air quality advisory because of smoke from the fires. In northern Manitoba, it's from our fires here. In the west, it's from fires in BC and Alberta. Now, we had hoped to reach Chief David Monias from Pimicikamak Cree Nation this morning. We just were unable to reach him. So we will continue to follow what is happening with the evacuees and what is going on latest from the fires. And I neglected to say a special good morning to all the folks listening who are here in the south who have been evacuated from their communities in the north. So hopefully you're finding good fellowship here, good friendship, and lots of resources to help you out through this time. Today should be a nice day if you're in the city of Winnipeg. A sunny high of 24 degrees is what we're expecting. Well, as you may have heard, Brian Wilson, the visionary musician best known for his work with the Beach Boys, died yesterday. He was 82 years old. The Beach Boys, of course, one of the most influential bands out of the States, but through the 60s, hits like Surfin' USA, Help Me Rhonda, Good Vibrations, all became iconic. Although it wasn't as much of a commercial success, Pet Sounds from 1966 is frequently listed among the greatest albums of all time. So we looked at that record to remember Brian Wilson this morning. This is Sloop John B.
We come on the sloop John B, my grandfather and me, around Nassau town we did roam, drinking all night, got into a fight. Well, I feel so broken, I wanna go home. So hoist up the John B. sail, see how the mainsail sets. Call for the captain ashore, let me go home. Let me go home. I wanna go home. Yeah, yeah. Well, I feel so broke up, I wanna go home. The first mate, he got drunk, broke in the captain's drum. The constable had to come and take him away. Sheriff John Stone, why don't you leave me alone? Yeah. Well, I feel so broke up, I wanna go home. So hoist up the John B, hoist up the John B. See how the mainsail, see how the mainsail. Call for the captain ashore, let me go home, let me go home. I wanna go home, let me go home. Hoist up the John B, hoist up the John B. Feel so broke up, I wanna go home, let me go home. The poor cook, he caught the fit and threw away all my grit. And then he took and he ate up all of my corn.
We are listening to Sloop John B. from the 1966 album Pet Sounds, considered one of the greatest of all time. Why are we listening to the Beach Boys? Well, because Brian Wilson, the founding member and creative force behind the group, died yesterday. He was 82 years old. So much music left behind. All right, we're heading into news time, but just before, if you're a regular listener, you might know that Marjorie Dowhouse always pops in and lets us know what's on for the call-in portion of Radio Noon today on CBC.
Well, Marcy, what do you do if a relationship or a friendship falls apart? And we're talking about this because there's a pretty big bromance, as you heard last week, that broke up. We're talking about President Trump and Elon Musk. They've been very public about their spat. So what do you do if you want to repair that friendship? When do you know that it's time to walk away? How do you fix relationships? We're going to have a couples counselor join us today on Radio Noon, taking your questions and giving us advice on how to fix those relationships.
That's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hear a lot about this among friendships now, though. Like,
Yep.
you really do. People taking charge and, like, acknowledging it earlier and even younger ages. Like, this is not healthy for me, or people use the word toxic or why. But, like, how do you navigate it?
Yeah. I mean, there are some
Fascinating.
relationships worth saving and obviously ones that, you know, you should learn to let go of. So
How do you assess it on Radio Noon? That's between 12:30 and 1. Thank you, Marge.
Thanks, Marcy.
Sorry, 12 and 1 is the whole show, but 12:30 and 1 is the call-in portion if you want to take part. Let's go to Heather Wells now in our CBC Manitoba News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's 14 degrees. We're headed to 24. Mix of sun and clouds, a little bit of haze out there again today. Manitoba has a new law punishing impaired drivers who cause the most harm to human life. They will now receive a lifetime driving ban if they have been convicted of impaired driving causing bodily harm or death twice in 10 years. Before, those drivers had their licenses suspended for 10 years. Now, according to MPI data obtained by CBC News, on average, 4 people receive 10-year suspensions a year. That means under this new law, roughly 4 people a year would be handed lifetime driving bans. Karen Reimer lost her daughter Jordan to a drunk driver in Winnipeg in 2022. She says punishing 4 people a year seems inconsequential.
It's a pretend legislation to look like Manitoba is moving towards tougher laws against impaired driving.
Justice Minister Matt Wiebe says Manitoba is working on another law with even tougher penalties. He gave no timeline on when that legislation will be introduced. Prime Minister Mark Carney says he is devastated to hear about the Air India flight that crashed just 5 minutes after takeoff with 242 passengers and crew on board. The airline says a Canadian was among those on board, and local police believe there are no known survivors. Carney says Canadian transportation officials are in close contact with their counterparts, and he is receiving regular updates on the situation. The plane crashed in a residential area in India's northwest city of Ahmedabad en route to London, England. Some encouraging signs in Manitoba's wildlife emergency. People from Cranberry Portage are going home on Saturday. Some other evacuated communities are also working on plans to welcome people back. Officials in Flin Flon say it is still too soon to know exactly when that could happen. Fire responders there are still tied up with the firefight, and until they are freed up, the city remains evacuated. Even the talk, though, of going home brings relief to evacuee Teresa Bignall.
Oh my God, I got goosebumps. It almost made me want to cry. I said, yes. I screamed, and my boyfriend was like, what? I said, yes, we got hope.
Bignall staying in a Winnipeg hotel. Before that, she was at an evacuation shelter. Chief David Monias at Pimachikamak Cree Nation says they're also working to get people home, but can't say when. A violent sword attack at Neelan High School in Brandon has students, staff, and families reeling. A 15-year-old boy was seriously hurt after being attacked on Tuesday. Ingrid Pulley-Blank has a teenager in grade 10 at Neelan.
We're just trying to process how to feel and how to navigate this and how to support those who were affected more so.
Brandon School Division says it has canceled provincial exams and is offering counseling for as long as it's needed. A 16-year-old boy faces a number of charges, including attempted murder. Police say both the suspect and the victim were students at that school. A missing 79-year-old man has been found safe. Winnipeg police had issued a silver alert earlier this morning after the senior hadn't been seen since last evening. But just moments ago, we have learned he is in fact safe and the alert has been cancelled. One of the scientists who penned an open letter to the province this spring about inadequate research funding is happy more cash is coming for science. The provincial government says it will top up its annual allocation for Research Manitoba. That is the agency that provides the bulk of the research funding in this province. Dylan Mackay, a University of Manitoba food scientist, says he was pleasantly surprised to see funding increase from $14 million a year to $19 million.
The estimate is that every dollar invested provincially brings in $4 to the province. That's a smart investment I think any Manitoban would see.
More than 200 scientists wrote to the province after Premier Wab Kinew mused about luring disaffected U.S. researchers north of the border. And do you have your blue and gold ready? The Winnipeg Blue Bombers kick off their CFL season tonight against the BC Lions at Princess Auto Stadium. The Bombers, however, will be without quarterback Zach Collaros. He was suspended for one game for failing to respond to a request for an off-season drug test. Chris Strevler suits up as quarterback. The Bombers will also line up against a familiar face, former Bomber quarterback and former coach. Buck Pierce is now the BC Lions head coach. It is the Bombers and Lions tonight. Game time, 7:30. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I'll be watching. All right. Thanks a lot, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's find out about the weather for the game and the traffic situation for the game. So why don't we start with the traffic situation? Sierra Sanders popping in here to talk about what you might want to keep in mind if you're heading down Pembina Highway and you're going tonight. Sierra?
Yes, Marcy. So as we've been mentioning, going to be a great night, but there are some construction things to keep out for. Keep an eye out for construction on southbound Pembina as you head toward Princess Audio Stadium, the Pembina Bridge over Abinogi-Meekina, and University Crescent as you head towards the stadium. Go Bombers!
I agree, totally. Woohoo! And the weather, Abby, is going to be really good football weather.
Yeah, as at kickoff time, it's still going to be pleasant. We're going to see temperatures around 21 and mild winds coming from the northeast at that time. It's going to be warm and hazy though, but we will be around 21. Up north, we're seeing smoky skies and cool temperatures warming up to 15. The southern regions will get to 24. More sunshine tomorrow. Take care in the smoky regions today.
Big thanks to those who had items on our program today. Associate producers Marshall Hodgins and Jennifer Dosso. Current affairs reporter Jim Agabee Agapito, community reporter and current affairs unit Shanley Vidal, producer Nellie Gonzalez, as well as Leif Larson, the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. Our news department, Heather Wells, Megan Ketcherson, and Alana Cole. And our live team, Abby Adiemi, Sierra Sanders, Brad Lillies, and Dylan Longhurst. Thanks, everybody. And thank you for listening, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Take care, be well. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. And yeah, go blue. The Current's coming up next.